Well, great. Well, listen, everyone, welcome to our GSA Acquisition Policy Federal Advisory Committee meeting here in December of 2023. Excited to get us all back together. We have a couple of great speakers, but we have many of you. Some members will not be able to join, and some will be coming a little bit later. First of all, I want to introduce myself. I am Boris Aratia at GSA, and I am the designated federal officer for the GSA Acquisition Policy Federal Advisory Committee. We'll use FAC going out so that you'll be able to know who we're talking about. With those of you who join in the public, welcome for joining today's meeting. I have a couple of instructions in a minute here to give you, but I will let you all know that we record our meetings as we normally do, and then we put them on our website for future review. I want to say, first of all, that we are in a process that's under the Federal Advisory Committee Act, and GSA has launched this committee now in September of 2022. That was our very first meeting. And we have been working now diligently since then. We are working under the Federal Advisory Committee Act because it is a transparent process. It is a process where we bring the best and brightest from different sectors of our society to come and help us tackle the complex challenges of the federal government. So it's a wonderful process. It has been around for many, many years. GSA does manage the Federal Advisory Committee Act process for all of the federal government, just as part of our group here. So what I want to do is, before we get too much further, again, there will be some members I'll be rolling in a little bit later, but what I want to do is I want to take a roll call to see who we have here so far. And then we'll get going with that. All righty, so let's see. I'm just gonna call out the names. Thank you, David, for checking in. So I see Denise.
Hello.
Yeah, I see Luke.
Here.
I see Daryl.
Present.
I see Nicole. I see Antonio.
Present.
I also see Mamie.
Yes.
I see Amlan.
Yes.
I see Anne.
Present.
I see Kristen.
Present.
I see Nigel.
Present.
I see Clyde.
Present.
I see Anish.
Hello.
I see Keith.
Here.
I see David Wagger.
Present.
And I see Kimberly.
Present.
Wonderful. So if David, if you go ahead and share screen for a minute here. I wanted to say, first of all, this is a process that is transparent. So for those of you in the public, we are going to be providing the presentations for today. And in the presentation, you will see a biography section that has a short biography of our 28 members in the FAC. And so we definitely get to know them. This is a great group of folks, put a lot of work in. And I just wanted to say that as a public attendee, you will have opportunities to engage. You have a Q&A feature. You can submit questions and comments. And then you can also use our email address, which is gapfac@gsa.gov, GAPFAC@gsa.gov. At any time, you can submit questions and comments. Additionally, at the end of the meeting, towards the end of the meeting, we will provide an opportunity for public comment to provide any remarks that you will have. And David, you can stop sharing the screen. Yeah. And so what I would like to do next, this is my great honor to introduce to you our GSA Assistant Administrator for the Office of Government-Wide Policy, Crystal Brumfield. It is my pleasure. Crystal, take her away.
Thank you, Boris, and happy holidays and good afternoon, everyone. It's a great honor to be with you all today for the FAC's public hearing, where we're taking another major step towards helping to address the climate change issue and the climate crisis through federal acquisition. As Boris mentioned, I'm Crystal Brumfield, the Associate Administrator for the Office of Government-Wide Policy at GSA. I'm an African-American woman with medium to light complexion. I have dark brown eyes. I have a cute dimple on my left cheek with long dark brown braids. And today I am wearing a bronze blazer with a black turtleneck. As Boris mentioned, we launched the GAP-FAC back in September 2022, and we wanted to bring together experts from multiple sectors of our economy to help generate ideas around two major things. One was to improve the way that government buy things. And then the second is to leverage the way the government has buying power so that we can advance important policy goals and issues. And so you've delivered on both of these fronts already. I'm grateful for the 6 recommendations that were received earlier this year, and also the GAP-FAC committee's continued commitment and hard work towards advancing sustainable procurement here at GSA. We have a workforce of nearly 9,000 acquisition professionals who impact the federal government's $700 billion spend on goods and services annually. GSA also plays a very key role in this space, and your advice on the GAP-FAC is making a huge difference towards this effort. Your initial recommendations, which you provided, has covered a lot of ground. You advised us on how do we make environmental and sustainability considerations a core competency in the federal acquisition. You've also helped us to broaden the pool of viable for federal suppliers of sustainable goods and services. And you've also helped us to figure out ways how we can reduce the government's reliance on and use of single plastics. And so your recommendations have helped us to shape our thinking, have helped us to create some high impact efforts towards integrating climate and sustainability into our acquisition process. Later, you'll hear today from several individuals and experts. You'll hear about the progress that we've made from our senior procurement executive, Jeff Kosas, but we are looking forward to receiving your recommendations in this next set of recommendations to strengthen sustainability in our initiatives. But before we get there, I really want us to share a little bit more about the journey and getting to those sets of recommendations, where we're going to hear again from 2 great speakers today and hear their compelling stories, which will feature best practices and innovations in climate action and sustainability from industry, academia, and from state and local government perspectives. I also would like to emphasize that each member of this committee plays a very crucial role in driving the progress that we make towards a more sustainable future. We appreciate each of your efforts and your insights, and we understand that this has been a huge team effort. And so I want to thank you for your contributions today. We also anticipate that the hearing, and we anticipate reviewing your recommendations, but please know that GSA not just receives these recommendations, but we're very committed to leading by example and to help to facilitate a whole of government approach to addressing climate change. Again, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all of the committee members, and know that your hard work and commitment has helped to advance this administration's climate and sustainability priorities. I'd like to specifically call out Boris, as well as Stephanie Hardison and Skylar for your leadership and dedication to help guide this GAP-FAC committee. Both Boris and Stephanie have highly important full-time jobs at OGP, and leading the GAP-FAC as the designated federal officers is a second-time job for them that they've done extremely well. So both of them have fully embraced this challenge. They've showed up each and every meeting with passion towards the mission of the GAP-FAC. And they talk to you regularly. They continue to improve our process that we've We started almost over a year ago, and they've helped guide this committee through achieving some highly beneficial deliverables. And so together, I think as a team, as a committee, as a country, we as a collective have a vision for a cleaner, healthier, and more prosperous future for America. And I think we're well on our way to achieving that. So I look forward to continuing to work together for this great cause. I'd like to wish you all and your family a happy season greetings, and I look forward to hearing the recommendations today and also from our speakers. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Kosas for his remarks. Jeff?
Thank you, Crystal. Really well said. And would very much like to join Crystal's remarks. Tremendous appreciation to all the members of the committee for the hard work, and definitely appreciate the huge amount that Boris, Stephanie, David, and Skylar have been doing in putting this together. So it's really great to be with all of you on another really big day for this committee. Last May, you gave us an initial set of recommendations. We've analyzed and considered those, and we've made a good bit of progress since then. Before you vote today on your second set of recommendations, I wanted to share with you and with everybody who's watching today the progress that GSA has made. When we received your initial recommendations, the first thing we did was to circulate them across the agency, asking for feedback. Once we had that, we briefed the recommendations and the feedback to the administrator, to her senior advisor for climate, and to other senior leaders of the agency. 3 of the recommendations came from the workforce subcommittee. These were: 1, to implement a change acceleration strategy; 2, to make sustainability a core foundational capability across the federal acquisition workforce; and 3, to create acquisition sustainability experts through a new sustainability certification. GSA has an acquisition career manager, B. Dukes, and B chairs a monthly cross-agency meeting which centers on our acquisition workforce. We shared your recommendations and the agency feedback with this group and adopted them, and we've been using our monthly meeting to ensure that we're making progress. One of our existing control mechanisms within the agency is holding what we call acquisition review boards. They're a chance to bring oversight and support to large, important acquisitions. It happens at 4 key stages. Now, we've long included our small business office in these review boards, and we include our CIO's office when we buy IT. We issued a policy now to add the office of our Chief Sustainability Officer to the board. Anytime a team presents before a review board, they know they're going to be asked to explain how they considered sustainability. They know they're going to get feedback and recommendations. We're now reaching the point that the contracting and program officials are bringing up the topic unprompted, and they're starting to explain where and how sustainability fits into their strategy. Over the next year or 2, we think that's going to become a standard practice. This summer, we drafted and we sent out for internal comment a policy change, a change which would require each of our heads of contracting activity to designate a lead on sustainability issues and make that person a core part of their support network. Much in the same way that we require them to designate a competition advocate, a contracting director, and an acquisition career lead. At this point, we've reconciled comments on the draft policy, and we're soon going to be issuing the final version. Once our heads of contracting activity name their leads, for the first time, each organization across the agency will have an identified sustainability champion in place. And at the agency-wide level, for the first time, we're going to have a roster of those champions. That's going to open doors for us to turn them into a community of practice. Getting that group together, building that community, that's a big part of what we're thinking of now as our change acceleration strategy. The Workforce Subcommittee also recommended that we establish a credential. We agree. Creating a credential is a long-term strategy. but I'm super excited to let you know, over the last few months, GSA fundamentally rethought and redesigned a government-wide training class, which is going to address integrating sustainability and climate risk management into acquisition. We took what used to be a basic awareness course and we turned it into a call to action. Because of the importance of this issue, our plan is to make this course mandatory for our acquisition workforce once the testing process is complete. Additionally, at least quarterly, we conduct training for customer agencies to build their knowledge of sustainable buying practices. For instance, in November, we hosted a training session on sustainable procurement for over 1,000 federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial professionals. So yes, lots of work has been going on the acquisition workforce front. In the industry subcommittee, you gave us 2 recommendations. One of these was to identify, engage, and onboard innovative new entrants. We've been really active on that recommendation. Maybe the most important piece, we've been working to build the industrial base for low embodied carbon building materials. Thanks to some funding from Congress as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, something I think you'll recall our administrator mentioning when she kicked off this committee, we now have funding dedicated to low embodied carbon building materials as part of federal construction projects. We've already modified a few of these existing contracts as part of a pilot in which we're swapping in these low embodied carbon building materials for the more traditional materials. We've also crafted solicitation language for new awards where we clearly explain we have a significant evaluation preference for low embodied carbon glass, steel, concrete, and asphalt. We see a definite need for more new entrants here, as state and local governments can magnify our dollars with the grants that they've received through the Inflation Reduction Act. And as we're working to bring capable new firms to meet this growing government demand. In another effort, as part of supporting the growing nationwide network of EV charging stations, we've changed policy and authorized our lessors to buy EV support products and services through FAC contracts. We think that promotes sustainability, it supports the new entrants that FAC is bringing aboard, and it supports cybersecurity at the same time. The policy subcommittee recommended we look at ways to reduce single-use plastics and packaging. Well, we've drafted a proposed change to the GSAR, that's GSA supplement to the FAR, to do just that. Our draft proposed rule went out for interagency review through OMB's Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, or OIRA, in late September. And I think there's a very good chance that we'll have a proposed rule out for public comment, potentially late this month, or else at some point next month. Our draft rule is designed to incentivize our federal supply schedule contractors to offer what we're calling single-use plastic-free packaging that includes both product and brand packaging, as well as shipping packaging. The draft rule explains one of the ways that we're going to try and incentivize this is by establishing new single-use plastic-free packaging icons for our online systems, such as GSA Advantage. We've talked to federal agencies who make clear they're interested in considering packaging as part of their buying decisions, and they're very excited about the concept. So in closing, I'll say we found your first set of recommendations highly valuable. They've helped us focus on key areas. They've helped us prioritize amongst competing demands, and they've helped us in building internal consensus. I hope hearing the progress that we've made over these last 6 months demonstrates our appreciation for your good work. Having seen such value in your first set of recommendations, I can tell you the entire acquisition policy team is super eager to hear you discuss today your next set of recommendations. So with a final thank you, let me pass the virtual podium to the chairs of the committee, to Troy Cribb and Kasia Spatz. Troy, I think you're up first.
I think so. And thank you so much, Jeff and Crystal, for your remarks. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us at this full committee meeting of the GAPFAC. I just really want to extend a big hearty thanks to GSA and starting with Administrator Kernahan and of course, Crystal and Jeff for really taking our May recommendations, socializing throughout all of GSA. There's so many offices within GSA who have a stake in what we've been talking about. And we're so excited and heartened by the reception that our recommendations have received so far. And that's really inspired us to continue along at a fast clip to produce another 10 recommendations for consideration today. I also especially want to thank our subcommittee chairs and co-chairs and other GAPFAC members who have volunteered to be on working groups to develop and draft the proposals that you'll hear about today. You have put in really long hours, and that just goes to show your devotion to meeting our goals of putting forth clear policies that the federal acquisition workforce can implement and that attract the most innovative firms into the federal marketplace. As Jeff and Crystal have alluded to, also, as always, a big thank you to our GSA Federal Advisory Committee designated officers, Boris Aradia and Stephanie Hardison, and also to David Kachenek and Skylar Holloway for your stellar support. You keep us on track with a very aggressive schedule, and you manage to do so in a way that just really fosters a sense of community within the GAPFAC and makes it a real joy for us to work with one another. So I'm also excited about our guest speakers today. Thank you so much for being with us. And I think your presentations today are really going to help enlighten our current proposals, but also really help us jumpstart our discussions for the next leg of our work in the new year. Jeff, you did an outstanding job of summarizing our 6 recommendations from May and the status. Again, we're so encouraged by the progress that's being made so far and appreciate all of your work there. So I won't tick through those 6 again, but I will turn it over to my distinguished co-chair, Cassius Butts, who's going to give a quick preview of the 10 recommendations that we'll be considering later in the meeting. Cassius?
Yes, thank you, Troy. And of course, thank you to Secretary Cranahan, Jeff, Crystal, Boris, Stephanie, the entire team is really, and all the members as well, too, for your dedication in developing today's set of recommendations. Some of our recommendations today will build on these recommendations in a very direct manner. Other are new suggestions for GSA. We're excited about the progress that the GAPFAC is making and driving sustainability and climate considerations in federal procurement. And we also believe that many of our recommendations will help to improve federal acquisition processes, no matter what the topic, whether we're talking about sustainability or emerging challenges such as AI. Now, here's a preview of our 10 recommendations that we will consider after our guest speaker, who will also provide perspective on many of the issues to help us understand the connectivity of all of this across the federal, state, local, private, and nonprofit sectors.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and share the screen. There we go. There it is.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, so we have 4 recommendations coming out of our acquisition workforce subcommittee, advising GSA on how to learn about third-party training opportunities for the federal workforce, emphasizing experimental learning for the acquisition workforce, hands-on practical experiences that foster deeper subject matter expertise. Also jumpstarting a cross-agency effort that establishes federal data standards and protocols for really equitable certifications and utilizations. And so establishing an artificial or AI task force focusing on sustainability, very timely given the new executive order laying out a comprehensive approach for the government on AI, which is very important. From our industry partnership subcommittee, we have 3 recommendations recommending the use of existing challenge.gov program to attract innovative and new entrepreneurs into the federal marketplace, and establishing a task force to pursue the stand-up of sustainability maturity model that we recommended in May. Also creating what we call the Lighthouse, a network of networks to expand GSA's reach to the potential vendor community, particularly with respect to new and emerging small and medium-sized underrepresented businesses, providing a platform for the guidance and knowledge exchange and mentorship. And finally, from my policy practice subcommittee, we have 2 recommendations. That's laying out the processes for GSA that can use to reduce PFAS in federal procurements, and recommending ways for GSA to incorporate disclosure criteria related to toxicity and access toxicity exposure information to reduce the risk of human health and to the environment. We really look forward to this full discussion this afternoon and launching the next set of recommendations. And so we really thank you for your time, your attention today. And back over to you, Boris and Stephanie, to introduce our next guest of speakers.
Thank you so much, Cassius. Thank you, Troy, Jeff, Crystal as well. And we are indeed at a good point right now to hear from 2 great speakers. We're going to start with our colleagues here from Hewlett-Packard, who have brought a really great story on their organization's journey in sustainability. And so we have 2 speakers. We have Julia Kamau and we have Kelsey Colbert. And just to introduce them a little bit, Julia, we had some good conversations with them. I'm really glad that we were able to connect. Julia is the Director of Global Sustainability Policy at HP. And that she leads development of public policy positions, advocacy strategies for HP's 2030 sustainable impact. She's working on the climate action, human rights, and digital equity space. Julia also tracks compliance topics for the company globally to make sure that there is alignment. And the thing about Julia is she brings a lot of expertise also from the federal government. She went to Johns Hopkins, studied their advanced international studies, but also spent time on Capitol Hill for 5 years as a senior legal assistant. And then Kelsey comes to HP as she's the Director of Federal Procurement Policy, where she develops strategies to enact federal procurement policies that promote cybersecurity and sustainability. So she's working on these 2 areas, which we hear actually a lot about cybersecurity as we've been working through this process. She spent 5 years before HP with the Information Technology Industry Council, ITI, and we had some conversations with those folks as well. So she developed industry consensus positions on cybersecurity and supply chain assurance policy issues for the IT industry. She's working also on a number of nonprofit organizations. Kelsey holds a bachelor's degree in political science from Denison University and a master's degree in political management from George Washington University. So Julia and Kelsey, welcome, and we would love to hear your stories. Take it away.
Great. Well, thank you all for having us. We are really excited for the opportunity to present to you some of what we've worked on at HP when it comes to sustainable procurement. We put some forth recommendations that we'll get into, and I'll kick it off with just an introduction on HP and some of our sustainable impact goals, which is really my day job. So if you want to go to the next slide, and excuse me, I'm recovering from pneumonia, so I have a cough, so I apologize in advance as I will be coughing through this presentation. But a little snapshot of where HP is today. So HP is a technology company, as you'll see from my background, that believes one thoughtful idea has the power to change the world. And this was really started and integral to our business by our founders, Bill Hewlett and David Packard, who founded HP in a garage in Palo Alto in 1939. And so Bill and Dave were businessmen that thought beyond profit. They thought that business, they strongly believed that the purpose of profits was to enable a company to contribute growth both to the community and the prosperity of the world. So this is a little snapshot of where HP is today. We have around 58,000 employees, and we operate in over 180 countries around the world with over 28,000 patents. And we work with over 250,000 partners to sell our products. If you want to go to the next slide. So as I said, really sustainability is core thanks to our founders. And so our vision is to be the world's most just and sustainable technology company. So in 2021, HP announced some of the most comprehensive and ambitious sustainable impact agendas in the tech industry that really connects us to some of the most urgent issues of our times, similar to a lot of the stuff that this committee talks about, like climate change, human rights, thinking about social impact, things like that. So we've kind of focused our areas on where we believe that we as a company will have the greatest impact. So if you go to the next slide, I'll walk you guys through where we focus our sustainability strategy. So again, it's really around 3 pillars. The first is climate action. So we are driving toward a net zero carbon and fully regenerative economy while we're trying to engineer some of the world's most sustainable product portfolios and solutions. So when it comes to climate, we have a goal to halve our emissions by net zero by 2030 and be net zero by 2040. And so to do that, we're really ramping up our investments in renewable electricity, really setting those science-based targets and trying to understand our full value chain footprint. We're also looking at the circularity of our products. So we have a goal by 2030 to achieve 75% circularity for our products and packaging. And what that means is, look at the weight of the computer. We have a goal that 75% of that weight will come from renewable, recycled, or biodegradable sources, things like that. And then lastly, when it comes to climate action, obviously we are a massive printer company. So we already achieve we work with the Forest Stewardship Council to ensure zero deforestation in our HP branded paper, but we have a goal to go one step further and ensure that any page of printer paper, regardless of the brand, is reforested. So we work with major NGO partners like the World Wildlife Fund, Arbor Day International, and Arbor Day Foundation and Conservation International to really work with farmers on the ground to reforest different ecosystems around the world. When it comes to our human rights goals, we're really trying to create a powerful culture of equity and diversity and inclusion at HP. So we're focusing on our own workforce and that of our suppliers. So in 2020, we have a goal to double the number of Black and African American executives at the VP level and above. We also are looking at, we also have one of the most diverse boards in the tech sector as well. And for us, our human rights policy recognizes that social and environmental issues are not only interconnected, but they also have many human rights dimensions. So we want to ensure that all of our workers and all of our suppliers are being treated with the utmost dignity and respect. So we work with our suppliers to train them up on different sustainability programs. We really focus on social and environmental assessments when we choose our suppliers and when we work with them throughout our product's life stage. And then lastly, when it comes, our last sustainable impact goal is around digital equity. So we have a goal to accelerate digital equity for 150 million people globally. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the NGOs we're working with there, but we're really trying to create innovative, holistic solutions in breaking down the divide around these 3 pillars of education, healthcare, and the economic opportunity. And we saw that after COVID, there were a lot of issues with students not being able to get online or not having the products at their hands. So we really want to ensure that digital equity is really boiled down to a basic human right. So that's the major areas where we focus our time, and some of our recommendations for incorporating these ideas into procurement contracts will come a little bit later. But if you want to go to the next slide. So this is basically our short-term and long-term strategy of where we're focusing to build a stronger HP. So starting at the bottom, this really goes back to some of our human rights goals. HP is focusing on creating a school of talent and fostering a culture of collaboration to ensure we're competitive in the long run. we think that this will be the foundation to transform and become a more digital, innovative, agile company that will lead to streamlined operations and then a better customer experience. We're focusing on building a more growth-oriented portfolio in some of our core business areas like personal computers, print and 3D printing, but also some of our newer product areas like peripherals, headphones, gaming systems, and also hybrid workforce, given that we're having this call virtually. So that's kind of where we're leaning in. As you can see, sustainable impact is really towards the top. It's really ingrained into everything that we do at HP. When I was onboarded, similar to some of the courses that you guys talked about, we have a sustainability course that we take when we come on and join HP, as we really do want to reach that vision of becoming the most just and sustainable technology company. And so we think all of that together will really help us achieve that significant value growth over time. So that's kind of a little bit about where we're focusing our efforts again in the near and short term. If you want to go to the next slide. And so I kind of wanted to give you guys a bit of information on where we focus our time and our efforts. So, and take a step back and say, hey, we're not just talking the talk, we're really walking the walk. And that's evident by some of the external validation that we've received through third-party raters and rankers. So first up, HP is the only technology company to receive a AAA list ranking for climate change, water, and forests by the CDP. And so to earn an A score, you really have to demonstrate best practices and strategy and transparency. And we're really proud to be recognized for that. We're one of only 13 companies globally to be actually receive this AAA rating. So it's something that we are going to continue. We actually were one of the first tech companies to really disclose all of our value chain emissions and create and publish a sustainable impact report. So disclosure and transparency is integral to what we do as a company. We also, as part of our circularity goal, are trying to design in a really innovative way. So we're incorporating those ocean-bound plastics. We're designing out single-use plastics, designing in renewable, recyclable plastics that we can use to create just really cool products in the future. And then we also have launched an HP Planet Partners program, which was launched back in 1991, and we offer take back of our products in over 76 countries around the world. We also offer this for ink and toner cartridges. And so this is really important because our customers can go online, they can get either free pickup or mail options for figuring out what to do with their products at the end of their lives. When it comes to human rights, we have also several raters and rankers that show we've adopted industry-leading practices. ICT benchmark is there. We're also named to Just Capital's list for the fifth year in a row. We're rated among the top 1% of companies for social and environmental efforts for the 13th time in a row by EcoVadis, and the list goes on. And we have a comprehensive list of different raters and rankers on our sustainable impact report. So I recommend, or I can drop that link in once Kelsey takes over. But lastly, I did want to get into some of the digital equity specific initiatives that we offer. So HP Life is a program that we offer. It's a free IT and business skills training program offered by our foundation, HP Foundation, to entrepreneurs, small business owners, students, and it offers free courses in a range of business-related aspects like data science, finance, marketing, communications, things like that. But we also work with different NGO partners to reach that 150 million, to bridge the digital divide for 150 million people globally. And so two organizations we work with, the first is NABU. It's a nonprofit working to disrupt the cycle of poverty through literacy. And they actually publish children's reading books in native languages. And so we just opened an HP NABU Creative Lab in the Philippines. We have one in Miami that's working on books in Creole. So it's really, really awesome. And trying to bring that bring children's books to a lot of people that might not be able to speak the English language. And another example is Girl Rising. We aim to equip 10 million students and teachers with new and inclusive curriculum and technology solutions in US, India, and Nigeria, and we've reached 1.9 million. So we're doing a lot. There's a lot of links there, and we'll get into some of the specific sustainable procurement recommendations. Given all of this background, I just wanted to make sure that you have some background on what HP is doing when it comes to sustainability and where we're focusing our time and why we're here to talk to you all. So I'll pass it to my colleague, Kelsey, now.
Thanks so much, Julia. Can we go to the next slide, please? So here we included a quote that emphasizes our view on the role that both the government and industry should play in mitigating the harmful effects of climate change. We think now is the time for the US government to be a leader on this issue, like GSA is already doing, and leverage the government's enormous buying power to promote sustainability in the industrial base. And we believe that private industry has a role to play as well that involves partnering together, sharing best practices, and raising the bar for everyone. And ideally, this would apply to both large corporations like HP and small businesses as well. Next slide. So fortunately, it seems like the contractor base is largely beginning to rise to the challenge and adopt common sustainability practices. According to data on the GSA website, 54% of contractors make disclosures via CDP, 60% have public greenhouse gas emissions inventories, and 57% have publicized their emissions targets. However, only 20% of contractors have set a science-based target, so that is definitely a growth area. Next slide. So I'll give a brief overview of the current policy landscape in terms of sustainable procurement. So in 2006, EP, the Electronic Product Environmental Assessment Tool, was developed, and starting in 2007, it was required in government contracts. This year, the Federal Acquisition Regulatory Council introduced a rule that allowed contractors to use other commonly accepted standards beyond EP to certify their sustainability practices. The Biden administration has made sustainable procurement a priority almost from day one. In both January and May of 2021, President Biden signed executive orders that highlighted his administration's intention of using the power of procurement to enact change in the industrial base, including where feasible, giving preference to bids and proposals from suppliers with the lower social cost of greenhouse gas emissions. So late last year, the FAR Council released FAR Case 2021-015. This is a far-reaching, ambitious rule with various disclosure requirements for contractors. So significant contractors, which are those receiving between $7.5 and $50 million in annual contract obligations, would have to annually disclose their Scope 1 and Scope 2 GHG emissions. And major contractors, or those receiving over $50 million annually, would also have to disclose their Scope 3 emissions and set a science-based target. And these mandatory disclosures would be subject to the responsibility determinations process under FAR Part 9, which means effectively that contractors who don't comply are barred from being awarded government contracts. So the FAR Council is also working on an additional case that would take this one step further by considering sustainability as part of the source evaluation process. So an RFI was published in late 2021 to collect industry input on how this best could be done. Next slide, please. So while we think incorporating sustainability into procurement decisions is a positive development, there are considerable challenges that could arise. The biggest of these, we think, is how to standardize sustainability requirements. Setting a target number of GHG emissions or automatically giving a preference to bidders who report lower emissions is tricky when companies of varying sizes are bidding on a contract. Many companies, including HP, have a dedicated subsidiary for their federal sales. And companies who report at the subsidiary level are likely to have lower reported emissions than those reporting at the parent level, which does not tell the whole story. Additionally, different industries will have different levels of emissions associated with their operations, as well as different means of demonstrating compliance with different requirements. So we think it's really important not to be too prescriptive here. There's also a challenge involved with how to incentivize small businesses to set and meet sustainability goals without excessive regulatory burden, as they likely don't have the compliance resources that a larger company might. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Julia to begin the discussion about our recommendations.
Awesome. If you can go to the next slide. So we wanted to put put forth some recommendations that we think, as you guys put forth recommendations through this committee, that you can think about it and talk about in future conversations. So if you want to go to the next slide. So I'm going to put a couple links in the chat that hopefully, is there a chat? Yes, that hopefully Boris can share at a later date. Let me just put these in for you all, and then I will talk about these. The first link should be able to get you guys to the 3 areas, but if not, I just put 2 of them in, and then we can discuss. But so these are resources that HP publishes annually. And so we put forth these set of recommendations for procurement officials like yourself who want to include sustainability when seeking to purchase printers or personal computers or supplies. And so as you can see from the criteria that I put it in the chat, we split it up by topic, and it's really just something for you all to think about going forth. And so, for example, it looks at eco labels that are out there. If we're just looking at print, there's eco labels like Blue Angel, Energy Star, EP, or things like product carbon footprint. And how can you verify that? By looking at international standards. So we offer suggest text that you can include just in whatever procurement or whatever contract or request for proposal you all put out there, and then give examples of how to verify that specific topic. So whether it's looking to an external rating system like science-based targets or CDP, or internationally accepted certifications like UL or ISO standards, things like that, we break it down into that specificity level. And another thing I think what's awesome here is we talk about why it's important and related to the UN Sustainable Impact Goals that really act as a blueprint to address these global challenges by 2030. So a similar trying to address the challenges that you all are trying to put forth recommendations for. And as you'll see in some of these recommendations, they not only look at products and packaging, they really go to social and human rights and business ethic considerations as well. So for example, they look at corporate social impact goals and how are companies incorporating like employee volunteering or community giving? Are they reporting that on their website? Why that's important? How are they looking at things like human rights? Are they members of different external groups like the Responsible Business Alliance or similar entities like that for you all to verify in your procurement contracts and why it's important? So we think this is a really great resource, and we wanted to make sure that you all had these links and the opportunity to look through them. And then if you go to the next slide. Another link I'll put in the chat is a recommended sustainable IT procurement guide that seeks to help procurement officials like yourself contribute to the advancement of circular economy. And so we really think that our classic linear model of what you take this product, you make it, or you take this primary product or mineral, you make it into something, you use it, and then you discard it, is just not sustainable. We really believe that public procurement can be a driver in transitioning to a circular economy that's based on designing, reduction, reusing, and recycling of products. So we think aligning procurement practices to encourage circular economy can be achieved by making informed decisions such as these ones. So really looking at circular supplies. How are procurement contracts incentivizing renewable, recoverable, biodegradable sources in the design and production processes? How can you incentivize purchasing something as a service rather than just the product itself? Because that can extend the life extend the life of the products longer. Also, production life extension, similar as that. How can you prolong the lifespan, the utilization, the value through repair or remanufacturing or resale of products? And fourthly, sharing a sharing platform to fully utilize assets by maximizing usage and value amongst several users, right? So similar to, I think someone mentioned EV charging stations, how can many people take into account the product instead of just one specific group or department or things like that? And then lastly, resource recovery, maybe incentivizing additional use and value from existing resources, and that will kind of ensure that there's avoided disposal or impacts from new extraction in the future. So we think thinking about circularity is really a future area, and we think this procurement guide that I posted in the chat, and hopefully Boris can include in the website later, are in areas where the government can focus in future recommendations. And then next slide.
Yeah, thanks, Julia. So the next recommendation we have is to leverage pre-existing authorities in the contracting process to really give bidders space to showcase their sustainability practices and the methods they employ to go above and beyond. So according to the Federal Acquisition Institute website, Betterment is a process where vendors have the opportunity to outline specific aspects of their proposed solution that exceed or enhance the government's requirement and the value those aspects bring to the government. So instead of a prescriptive requirement that may not capture the very real discrepancies that can arise or the wide range of best practices out there, we're envisioning a two-tier system where the US government sets minimum disclosure requirements, as it already does in FAC 2021-015, and also incentivizes contractors to demonstrate how they exceed these requirements. Other governments like Germany have developed a similar system for cybersecurity. We think it would work well here too. In our minds, this helps solve the standardization challenge, and it gives contractors room to tailor their abilities to an agency's specific mission and programmatic needs. We think publicizing the US government's value of sustainability practices, it can be communicated either through public meetings or mentioned directly in solicitations. The reforms that Jeff outlined earlier are absolutely fantastic. We definitely encourage regular training for contracting officers, just given how many factors they have to consider, to emphasize the importance of sustainability and what to look for in proposals. Next slide, please. So here we have a few ideas for actions the US government can take right now. So first, require all vendors to have measured, disclosed, and set targets to reduce their carbon emissions. I mentioned FAR case 2021-015. That's already going on. We're hugely supportive of that rule. Require all vendors to set and disclose their post-consumer plastics goals in the goods and packaging that you purchase. Service-based procurements, really important. I understand GSA is already working on an initiative for consumption-based cloud, which is definitely positive and should be a model going forward. And then finally, signal to vendors that this is important to the government, that you want their help in meeting your goals, that you expect them to invest in social impact work, and that you intend to give significant weightings to circularity, transparency, and performance. Again, we don't want to be prescriptive, but one target is maybe 30% of the procurement decision is focused on sustainability, given its many benefits. Next slide, please. So I'll close with a quote from one of our founders, Dave Packard. "The betterment of our society is not a job to be left to a few. It is a responsibility to be shared by all." As Julia mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, our founders were passionate about what they called the HP way, which is their desire to use the company as a vehicle for doing good and helping others. We're very pleased with the US government's work to use the procurement process to further these important sustainability efforts, and we're happy to help in any way we can. So thanks again for the opportunity to speak, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Julia and Kelsey, and wonderful presentation. I wanted to open it up now for some Q&A for our members. And just as a clarification, as we are conducting this meeting here in the public space, so the Q&A really is open for the members of the committee only at this time. So wanted to open it up for you all in the committee to have a couple of minutes here for a couple of questions.
Yeah, I've got a question. I recognize in some of your, I'm sorry, did I raise my hand? I didn't raise my hand.
Yeah, go ahead, Farah.
I appreciate you all presenting this out and being recognizing of the need for small businesses to actually have an approach to recognize the sustainability. And I haven't read your information, but do you have a phased approach, or do Are you giving a grandfather a time frame, or what are you thinking around how to get those businesses engaged? Because they're going to still be requirements. It appears that there's some sensitivity that they may not have all the capacity to get all the way up through the ESG requirements. But so what was the thought or the pathway for ensuring that they get included?
That's a great question. Thanks so much for asking it. I think a phased approach definitely makes sense. As you said, a small business is not going to have the same resources. So we really think it's important that the community work together on this. That's why we think ample communication from the government and signaling that this is important is crucial. I think we're envisioning somewhat of a mentor protege program where a big company can partner with a small one and share best practices. HP, a lot of our government business is done through small businesses, and you kind of use that partnership in order to kind of slow down the bigger companies' best practices, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so I'm going to go to Mark and then Nicole. Mark?
Thank you for that, Boris. The question I have is there a U.S. ranking of companies for sustainable practices or sustainability measurement of some sort? And where does Hewlett-Packard fit? And then finally, is there an international equivalent and where do you fit? Thank you.
So I don't think there is a ranking either in the US and internationally. That's why we rely on a lot of third-party raters and rankers. And the US government has pointed to CDP in some of the FAR cases, or the Science-Based Targets Initiative in some of their FAR cases as well. So there is a website that I've seen, and I can try and track it down for Boris and other members of the GAPFAC that shows CDP rankings and whether companies set science-based targets and all that. But again, it's pointing to those third-party external entities, not anything done by the US government or governments themselves.
Well, thank you for being a leader of industry. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you. Nicole?
Yeah, I want to thank you, Kelsey and Julia. Terrific presentation. You mentioned something that really caught my attention related to your goal of being carbon neutral by 2030. And it sounds like you're engaging in discussions around Scope 3 emissions. I'm particularly curious to learn how you're engaging your suppliers and how you're assessing their carbon emissions and how this maps into your goal. What specific strategies are you undertaking?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for us at HP, 98% of our value chain emissions come from Scope 3, 30% being from our customer use. So, and then 70% often with our supplier usage and more of our supply chain, right? So what we disclose is we're able to create a targeted approach. So we work with our suppliers in a couple of ways. We have a supplier engagement card that we're really hands-on. So we try and enable them to set science-based targets and give them the resources. Again, this goes back to our ability as a big company to be able to do that. So help them understand their emissions and set science-based targets, work with governments on the ground to figure out where, or the utilities on the ground or things like that, figure out where they can procure renewable energy and things like that. But we're also members of the Responsible Business Alliance, which has really great supplier engagement priorities and solutions as well. So we do it through Responsible Business Alliance, but again, we're very hands-on with our suppliers to give them the resources and ensure that there's an open dialogue between them and a lot of our carbon strategy and carbon reduction groups that we have here at HP.
May I have a quick follow-up on that? And that is the supplier engagement card that you have. Would you be willing to share that with members of the GAPFAC?
Yeah, let me ask about, I know we have a lot of it in our sustainable impact report, and so I can get specifics on whether it's we can share the specific card. Maybe we can have a follow-up conversation where we bring in some of the people who do work with our suppliers one-on-one, because again, it's kind of similar to that old saying, like, if you teach a man to fish, he'll be able to fish for life, or whatever the saying is, you know. So yeah, we'll be willing to at least share something, and I'll make sure to follow up with Boris and the committee on that.
Absolutely. And I see I have time for one more question, Richard, and then we will need to continue on. But Richard, you get the last one.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Could you talk a little bit about the expectations that are being placed on the acquisition workforce and the expected increased level of expertise and training? The status quo, is it deficient, and what additional trainings do you anticipate would be required?
Sure. So I do recognize that it's a heavy lift. I know the acquisition workforce is already considering a lot of different things. I think, in our experience, it's just we need the government to signal that this is important and that there's downstream benefits from sustainability practices. I thought that the training suggestions that Jeff outlined were really fantastic and is a step in the right direction. I think just as long as the acquisition workforce knows what the best practices are, what to look for in solicitations, I think it might seem like a heavy lift at first. I do think there's a path to standardizing that.
Well, thank you so much. And we have we're just running a little behind schedule, but I just want to do a virtual applause to our friends from HP, everybody. All right. Awesome presentation, really wonderful. And this conversation continues. So we know where you are, you know where we are. I feel like you opened a lot of things for I could see the wheels turning definitely on our committee members, because we are on the next round of discovery activities. And I think you hit on some things that really resonated with the folks here. So we really thank you for bringing your message here. Welcome to stick around for the rest. There's a lot more to come. We're going to go into a short break. We're going to take a 5-minute break. And when we come back, we're going to then hear from our next speaker from Harvard. So it'll be another wonderful presentation. And so let's go ahead and take 5 minutes. It's 2:05. Let's go back at 2:10. So 2:10, we're going to resume. All right. We'll see you in 5 minutes. All right. So welcome back after this brief break. A lot more to come. If you are in the public viewing area, welcome again. If you join a little bit later, we are holding this meeting with a Q&A feature. You're welcome to put any questions or comments you may have. We will also have an opportunity later on for asking questions. We have a public participation area towards the end of the meeting where you can also add comments or any questions you may have. I wanted to also say that after we started with our leadership, setting the context and really answering the why question. Why are we doing this work and why is it important? We just had a fabulous opportunity to hear from HP on what they're doing with sustainability, which I feel really inspires a lot of the work of the committee. We're going to get another presentation here in a minute from Harvard. And then after this presentation, we're going to then go into the committee work where each of the 3 subcommittees will present their recommendations. And then you'll have an opportunity to hear what the new recommendations are, and they'll have the opportunity to vote. And then towards the end, we'll summarize, and then that'll be a wrap. But the first thing I want to do right now is I want to introduce my colleague and friend, Stephanie Hardison, who is the Deputy DFO, but I'll let Stephanie take it from here.
Good day, everyone, and welcome back. And once more, thank you all for joining us. I'm Stephanie Hardison. I'm the Deputy Designated Federal Officer for the FAC. And today it is an honor to introduce 3 exceptional guest speakers. Representing the esteemed Harvard Kennedy School Government Performance Lab. They stand at the forefront, playing a pivotal role in shaping the integration of sustainability into the procurement process. And without any further ado, I would like to welcome and introduce Elena Hofnagel, Director of Procurement Research and Development, Kaylee Berger Ayogu, Managing Director of Government Performance Labs, and Neha Gupta, Senior Advisor of Government Performance. I'll hand it over to you guys.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And I will drive the slides a little bit, so you'll have to forgive me if I'm not as smooth as the professionals. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Kaylee Berger-Yogu. I'm Managing Director at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government Performance Lab, where I lead our procurement portfolio. Thank you so much for having us today. This is such an exciting moment and such an amazing group of leaders in this space. We've been so impressed by your report outlining the committee's recommendations and seeing all of your efforts to make federal government a leader in sustainable purchasing. Today, we hope to support your efforts by sharing some promising practices across levels of government as cities, counties, and states are aiming to integrate sustainability within procurement. I'm also joined today by my colleagues, Neha Gupta, who serves as a senior advisor, and Elena Hofnagel, our director of procurement research and development. So today we're going to share more about who we are and how we support governments in the US, key insights that have emerged from jurisdictions doing this important work, and some ideas for how we can all collaborate to better support the procurement sustainability workforce and ecosystem. So let's just jump into telling you a little bit about who we are and what we do. The Government Performance Lab is a research and technical assistance lab based out of the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. One key component of our work is that we consider ourselves to be implementers. So rather than just delivering recommendations to governments, we actually provide hands-on support, and we do that in 4 key ways. The first thing we do is intensive projects where we embed staff within jurisdictions. So this year, for example, we're working in Seattle, Jackson, Mississippi, Syracuse, New York, and the states of Connecticut and Pennsylvania. And these projects are multi-year efforts where we provide surplus capacity to transform procurement from top to bottom. That I support is cohort learning and coaching. So we coach groups of cities who work in collaboration on similar challenges, and they're able to share learnings and build capacity to tackle transformation. The third area we provide support is through training and executive education. So we train governments on many topics in order to upskill staff and enable them to take on new challenges. And we also offer executive education programs at Harvard to develop key leadership and change management competencies needed to effectively improve procurement and help staff achieve better results. And lastly, we share all these lessons learned for free through our Procurement Excellence Network. So we take everything we learn on the ground with governments and we turn it into tools, resources, office hours, and other supports. And that network has over 1,200 public sector procurement leaders across all levels of government. And we'll share a little bit more about PEN as we close so that you can all join and get engaged as well. We're really excited to bring this lens of implementation to today's conversation, and we hope that hearing tactical examples of how things are playing out on the ground can help validate some of your conclusions and spur new ideas for how to encourage a sustainability mindset in procurement. I also just want to quickly share with you our overall approach to the work. We've done projects with over 150 governments, so we've worked through all these different challenges and distilled down what we think it really means to do procurement well. And this is really simply described here in our procurement excellence framework, which has 4 key pillars. The first is being efficient and fair. So this is often the first step in being more strategic. We work with governments to streamline their procurement processes, making it easier for vendors, staff, and the public to understand, and also freeing up time to focus on the things that matter most. For example, considering how to meet sustainability goals or incorporating the best sustainability standards. The second area we focus on is making procurement more results-driven. A results-driven approach to RFP writing and contract management will frame that contract around the key goals of that purchase from the outset. Instead of being an afterthought, governments can bring sustainability outcomes they hope to see into the contract planning process from the very beginning, and thereby baking in their ability to achieve those results. The third area is very important is equity. We think that means 2 things. First, that all vendors, including small and diverse vendors and first-time participants, can compete on an equitable playing field to do business with the government. And second, that once that contract is in place, there should not be disparities in the resident-facing outcomes among different groups or neighborhoods. We'll speak shortly about how, if done right, integrating sustainability goals can enhance government's ability to bring new and underutilized vendors into business with government, spurring competition, green innovation, and equitable economic growth. Our fourth pillar, strategic, is really around supporting governments to elevate the status of procurement. And instead of being viewed as a compliance-focused back office function, it's really one that's viewed as strategic and something that can be leveraged to get results. When procurement is recognized as a policy lever, its potential to help advance policy goals can be more fully realized. And as this group well knows, procurement must be leveraged fully and strategically if we're going to achieve our ambitious climate and sustainability objectives. We're so pleased to be here with you today, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Neha, who's going to talk more with you about the importance of public procurement in driving the response we need to tackle the climate crisis. Neha, I'll hand it to you.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you so much to the committee for having us here today. Cities, counties, and states that we work with are increasingly naming the climate crisis as a top priority, and they're looking to procurement excellence as a key lever for achieving their climate policy goals. Compared to just even 10 years ago, more jurisdictions are creating environmental and climate action plans, like for uses of renewable energy and recyclables, electrification of city fleets, reducing water use, and eliminating toxic chemicals. And thanks to the bold policy direction of this administration, we're also hearing that as cities implement new infrastructure investments, the climate impact of those investments is an upfront consideration. A lot of governments are also recognizing that emissions reduction goals require a close look at procurement because their supply chain emissions are so much greater than their operational emissions. A lot of exciting strategies to integrate climate with purchasing are thus emerging. For example, governments are embedding criteria into RFPs that assess a proposer's green business and sustainability practices, like a lot of the great standards we just learned about from HP. Others have brought on sustainable purchasing staff and experts to help account for the latest advances in sustainable products and technologies and technical assistance to support change. And others are negotiating cooperative contracts for green alternatives that peer jurisdictions can actually piggyback on, which increases purchasing power and builds economies of scale. While we'll definitely get into some promising insights from the state and local levels that we're seeing in our work, we also wanted to take a moment to just underscore our excitement about this committee and GSA's leadership on how we can make systemic improvements to procurement that will serve our climate goals and also can equip government to deploy procurement as a strategic response to the big challenges we face today, like climate change, and those we'll face in the future. Here at the GPL, we see procurement as a powerful tool for climate action because, as you'll see from the little graphic on the slide, it sits at the intersection of forces we think are needed to take on climate change at scale: governments, the private sector, and impacted communities. And it's exciting to see that even in today's meeting, we're all being brought together to think about this challenge as partners and collaborators. If used right, procurement can direct investments and align incentives to drive the innovation, inclusion, and commitment we need across all sectors to meet bold net zero, toxics elimination, and waste reduction goals. With the shape of its procurement approach and the use of its purchasing power, the federal government can be a standard bearer of best practices for state and locals to follow. And it's very exciting to see all the work that has happened already at GSA and that's coming down the pike in this regard. It's why we're really thrilled to be part of this conversation with you today. So now I'll walk through at a high level some opportunities we're seeing across the procurement lifecycle that state and local governments are seizing to align purchasing sustainability goals. We'll then hone in on 3 key opportunities for this group's more fulsome consideration. Many of these dovetail with the exciting recommendations the committee has already been discussing. What you'll see here on the slide is a typical procurement process for a solicitation broken down into its key phases. First, we have market forecasting and drafting. In governments leading on climate goals, sustainability and purchasing staff are jointly forecasting upcoming contracts. For instance, looking ahead to what key procurements are coming up for rebid in the next 6 months to assess how to best design contract specifications. This forward-looking collaboration is a key moment to prioritize. It might just not be prudent or practical to try and integrate sustainability specs or climate goals into every contract from the get-go. But through forecasting, governments can decide where and when to push. For instance, to look for low-hanging fruit where they can score early wins and build momentum. The planning phase is also a good time to consider alternatives to selecting the lowest bidder and whether it's appropriate instead to look at a product's true cost over its life cycle. So then in the second phase, once the solicitation's out on the streets, sufficient outreach to the vendor community and education about new bid requirements is crucial. This helps new and underutilized vendors have an equitable opportunity to bid, especially among firms that have novel products or technologies that the government hasn't previously procured for. We've also heard from governments about the importance of technical assistance and educating vendors on new requirements at pre-proposal meetings. For instance, one city has shared the importance for them of sustainable purchasing staff regularly attending pre-bid meetings to ensure vendors are aware of clean construction requirements from early on. Then third, at the evaluation and award stage, we're seeing emerging models of government scoring prospective vendors on sustainability-focused criteria to select best value bids. An interview component here at this portion of the process can also provide committees with a better understanding of what a given vendor has to offer. Once a vendor is selected, contract management begins. From the start, a proactive approach is essential to ensure that requirements and goals that have been written into the contract actually come to fruition in the delivery of goods and services. We're big believers in the use of data-driven performance metrics and regular checkpoints throughout the contract period. Especially with new sustainability requirements, these kinds of checkpoints can help ensure that both the vendor and the contract administrator, who might be someone who wasn't involved in the process so far or might not be as familiar with sustainability requirements, are all aligned on the expectations. One common problem governments have surfaced is that someone on the procurement team needs to be clearly assigned the responsibility of monitoring the contractor and ensuring compliance. Especially in the context of cross-agency or whole of government collaborations, it's really important to clarify who will own this responsibility from the outset. And at the last stage, the close of a performance period is the time to assess whether the contractor met sustainability goals and whether the metrics and checkpoints used in the process were effective. It's also a time we can think about how a new procurement impacted the ancillary government operations and research how innovations in the market should inform whether to renew a contract or rebid. That assessment leads right back into step one, the forecasting and planning process. So while we've broken it down here in the visual of a linear chain, the procurement process is really better understood as a life cycle and a feedback loop of constant planning and iteration. So from this high-level overview, we think there are three key challenge areas for real focus that we'd like to share with this committee. I'll hand it over in a moment for my colleague to Elena to elaborate, but I'll just briefly summarize them first. So the first one is the challenge of smoothly integrating sustainability specs and goals into the procurement process to avoid extra burden and maximize efficacy. The second is ensuring supports for small and underutilized vendors and new market entrants in the face of new requirements. And the third is that the acquisition workforce needs to both be closely engaged and consulted in designing green procurement processes and adequately resourced. We're seeing in our work that this is true now more than ever because many purchasing offices at all levels of government are understaffed and facing an influx of purchases. I'll now hand it over to Elena and she'll talk through each of these a bit further. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Neha. So let's dive into how some of these challenges and opportunities are showing up based on what we've heard from state and local governments. So we shared the moments to consider sustainability in a procurement process because a big theme that we're seeing is that sustainability strategies at the local and state level really often are not that well integrated into procurement processes, or they're really tacked on as an afterthought. And what we're seeing happen is that this lack of integration within the procurement process can actually create resistance among acquisition staff who feel that so many new requirements have been added on, and that's meaning many additional ad hoc steps for them. So to give you an example, we heard from one city that their buyers must remember to check for adherence to a component of the city's sustainability policy in the final review of a solicitation. And as you can probably imagine, this is a step that's often skipped because it's not incorporated into other checklists that these government buyers have. We also heard from a county that sometimes a buyer only remembers to go to the sustainability team members the day before an RFP needs to be released. And that's the point where they're asking for last minute help for specs to be more environmentally focused. The second of these challenges, as Neha mentioned, some jurisdictions are really struggling to know what are the purchases that could have the most impact in helping them to meet their climate goals. So one city we spoke with, they told us, and I'm going to directly quote here, approaching green procurement as a whole is a beast. It feels so hard to review all of the city's goods and services, the spending in each category, and then focus on what's the highest spend or closest alignment to green. Another county that we talked with, they shared that many of their staff actually guessed that the greatest greenhouse gas emission impact could come from the goods that the county's buying. But once the county actually looked at the data, a much larger share was coming from professional services and construction. And in this case, without the county calculating that data, which many jurisdictions really aren't yet equipped to do, they would have had a lot of trouble persuading staff who are working on professional service contracts to think about sustainability at all. A third thing that we're seeing quite a bit from many governments is that they're telling us that they feel stuck with low bid approaches that don't help them consider the true cost of a product. One city chief procurement officer shared with us that they also anticipate that their council is going to grill them on all the potential added costs of these green purchasing efforts. And they felt that with more data on where there are cost savings that might materialize down the road, that can really help them be prepared to have those conversations. A great example in thinking about life cycle costing is the work that Washington State is doing. They're looking at factors beyond price, including past performance and life cycle costing, to be able to determine a responsible bidder, which in the past has enabled them to award a lot of environmentally preferred products and services that originally were a higher purchase price and might not have won in a low bid competition. Some of the strategies that we're seeing here are improved procurement planning, where governments, as Neha were mentioning, are considering sustainability strategies for projects right at the start of a project's conception. So what we're hearing about is things like dig once interagency meetings ahead of road improvement projects, sustainability being brought in during RFP kickoff meetings where the initial scope of work is being developed. Another theme that we're hearing quite a bit is that sustainability policies can't just be created. They have to be really thoughtfully implemented into procurement manuals and checklists, into existing purchasing training that's happening across a city, a county, or a state, and that there needs to be a really robust internal comm strategy associated with the sustainability policy. A great quote that I heard in a recent conversation we were having with a jurisdiction about their policy was, "You can pass any policy you want, but it doesn't make a difference if no one knows anything about it," which I just think speaks so well to the challenge so many jurisdictions are facing in terms of policy implementation. Another promising practice on the process front is developing model specifications for common sustainable purchasing state and local governments are doing, like janitorial, office supplies. A number of jurisdictions like DC, New York State, Alameda County, and California have actually written those model specifications, but we're also hearing that it's quite a burden to keep those updated because products are evolving so constantly. And on the prioritization piece, one thing that we're hearing quite a bit about is that governments want ideas and suggestions for how to prioritize key procurements for sustainability. In the past, the GPL, we've done some work with the city of Glendale, Arizona to prioritize its 3 highest priority procurements each year. And then staff have actually come together to form working groups to rethink those procurements. And we're really excited about thinking about whether that model could be applied to other cities and counties who are trying to decide how to focus on 3 specific procurements to consider for sustainability and environmental strategies if they're just beginning this journey. And as jurisdictions are thinking about prioritizing, we'd also really encourage them to think more about pilots. So many of these shifts to more sustainable products can require big changes to agency operations that staff are quite nervous about. And so the use of pilots can help to work out the kinks and actually help set up an agency for success. So let's go on to the next slide and talk a bit more about engaging and supporting the vendor community. I think Neha gave you a great preview of this, but we really see 2 challenges here. One, that there's a perception that anytime we add more specifications or requirements like sustainability standards, we risk undermining a jurisdiction's efforts to do more contracting with smaller, historically underutilized businesses. So what we hear quite a bit is that small firms are struggling with large upfront investments or are fearful of changing business practices that might now be required. They might need to quickly gain new areas of expertise. They might not have the capacity for reporting or new required data collection. They may not be able to pivot operations quickly or stay up to date on the newest product innovations. So really for us, what we're encouraging governments to think about is that how are you making sure that none of these requirements are eliminating vendors, but how are you thinking instead about what resources you might be able to provide that would support your competitiveness? One large city's chief procurement officer shared with us, and I'm going to quote directly here, "We can't turn a blind eye to what might be the negative impacts that come from what we purchase. We are layering on requirements for firms that aren't at the same starting point." And this city specifically, they've been thinking quite a bit about the risk that might come in excluding small firms from their landscaping contracts if they require non-gas powered mowers, right? So this is a really big priority goal that the city has, that they're having to think about. How does this connect with our local and small business goals that are also a priority for us? Second up here is that many firms have their own ideas about how to reduce the climate impacts of their operations, or have ideas about new technologies, approaches, and products. But all too often, vendors aren't given the chance to share these ideas during a typical solicitation process. So we're really interested in thinking about how to adjust procurement processes so that they can spur innovation and competition that might lead to technological breakthroughs. So as we think about solutions here on supporting small businesses, some of the promising strategies we're seeing at the state and local level include more frequent engagement with the vendor community, testing of messaging and comprehension of new requirements, more carrot versus stick supportive approaches like phasing in new standards on timelines, and also providing technical assistance to small businesses to help them build capacity. So a few examples here from city government. One city told us about a new grant program they have to support small businesses in retrofitting off-road diesel equipment. And that same city has also hired a consultant who can help small businesses and nonprofits with associated reporting and data collection. There's also a great story coming from a county in California who was really interested in working with local vendors on an office printing contract, but some of those small local vendors weren't able to meet the green printing requirements at the start of the contract. So rather than having those requirements being really stuck, the county took the approach of helping vendors to become a certified green business printer during the course of the contract, and actually providing technical assistance to small businesses to do that rather than requiring it from the very start. And then finally, I think something we all know here is that buying new technologies or innovative products in government is just so hard, and it really hits at the risk-averse stance that many in procurement have. So what we're really excited to see that many project managers on contracts are stepping up to think about new ways to buy more innovative solutions. We've seen some state and local governments setting up formal pilot approaches. So for example, we helped the city of Long Beach design their Pitch Long Beach program. And this is a great program because vendors can formally suggest products or approaches that might solve a challenge that the city's facing. And then departments in the city of Long Beach can also develop problem challenge statements that the vendor community can respond to. And this is really similar as well to the Request for Innovative Ideas, RFI2 approach that's used at the state level in California. Another thing we're very excited about, I think that connects so well with what HP was mentioning earlier, is this idea to think about how to allow vendors to propose how they would reduce the emissions of their operations as part of, say, a service or a construction contract. So I think just thinking very hypothetically, you could imagine one construction contractor, they might be very well equipped to use reclaimed asphalt in a project, but another contractor might not have that know-how, but they have a very compelling proposal to source equipment locally that could achieve similar emission reductions. So let's go on to the next slide and conclude a bit by talking about the acquisition workforce. A common theme that's come up in our research is that while many governments have created sustainable purchasing policies, far fewer of those governments have appropriately resourced those policies with additional staff. And as I was mentioning earlier, that means that much more is being asked of purchasing staff. And as I think we all know, this is a really hard moment for purchasing staff and leaders across government. They're burned out from COVID. They have an increasing number of solicitations on their plate. Their offices are understaffed. And so even though a lot of the procurement officials we talk to are really interested in the concept of sustainability and environmental impact, they just feel that it's not realistic given their workloads that they have. Another thing that we've heard quite a bit in our interviews with purchasing staff is that they feel that they don't see the impact of their extra efforts for sustainability, or even that they weren't consulted in the development of sustainability policies and procedures, and now feel that they must apply them in a more arbitrary way. One city we spoke with, the purchasing staff shared that because the sustainability requirements for recycled paper, they felt quite arbitrary to purchasing and were only applied in some scenarios. That's made them far less interested in enforcing them compared to if they had been involved in the implementation of the policy at conception. So strategies that we're really excited about here include sustainability teams working closely with agencies and departments in market research. Purchasing officers just don't have the time to do the hard discovery work and research new products and trends within the industry. So how can they receive extra support to do that? A second strategy we're excited about is involving purchasing teams in the design of policies and procedures and goal setting. We really believe that if these teams are engaged in design or implementation considerations from the get-go, they're much more likely to embrace those policies in their work. We also believe that there's a great need to strengthen communication strategies about sustainable purchasing procedures in most state and local governments, and offer regular interactive training, which I think aligns so well with the committee's recommendations. We'd be really excited to continue to engage with this group and others at the federal level to think about how do we design training that's experiential and is really going to help folks develop the skill set needed for this new work. So if we go on to the, this is our second to last slide, we wanted to close with some takeaways and ideas for moving this work forward across levels of government. First, we see a need for increased sharing of tools and resources within and across government. I think there's no shortage of resources out there, whether they're model specifications, alternative products, prioritization tools, but many governments don't have the time to search for all of these resources, or these resources just feel too overwhelming and they're not quite grab and go and can't be used immediately in a city official's day-to-day. Second, a big theme that I just wanted to emphasize once again is that many smaller governments just don't know where to start to prioritize sustainability efforts across their purchases, or they're stuck in this moment where they have a very hard time moving past the pilot phase. Or third here, that for many sustainability policies in local government, there's just not the staff or bandwidth to enforce or implement, or the continued attention from leadership after that first policy gets developed. Our fourth takeaway that we'll share with you is just the need for additional engagement with the private sector, both for the private sector to share what firms can and can't deliver on, and also to share about products and options that the government might not yet be aware of. And I think this increased engagement really can also be a space to signal to the vendor community what are the future goals and needs that they have that the private sector potentially could solve for. And finally, continuing the conversation. As we mentioned earlier, we've got this great procurement excellence network with nearly 1,200 members. This is a major way that we scale and spread ideas across jurisdictions and also understand a lot of themes like the ones we talked about today. It's got a great go-to library and resource hub that has many different publications, tools, and templates. Many of these also connect very well with our talk today. So we have things like guides on writing more problem-based RFPs, RFP kickoff meeting tools and templates, tools to get past change management issues in government. So would really encourage you all to check out some of these resources. And then let's go ahead to the final slide. Just thank you all so much for having us today. We're very excited to stay engaged and continue the conversation. And we really hope that we can be a source of support for the federal government's efforts on all of this. And here are our emails if you'd like to reach out. And I'll turn it back to Stephanie.
Thank you all so much. That was just wonderful, very engaging. At this moment, I'll open it up for any questions that any of the members may have. Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Thank you for that excellent presentation, and it really resonated with me. I have about 8 years as the state purchasing agent in the state of New Mexico, so a lot of what you said really strikes home. And I like the sharing across the states approach, and I've been urging that from the FAC from the beginning. And I know there are red and there are blue states across the country. A lot of them are strapped with the low price choice rather than the life cycle or best value choices in making purchasing. And I really advocate that as well. But unfortunately, we're one of the states that has no statute, no rule, no policy, no government order, and nobody who wants a job here wants to stick out their neck and buy something other than low cost. But I think the Fed best practices may change the implementation, which is something else that struck me. You know, how do you get at the granular level for the people making decisions? And I'll kind of throw it back at you for a comment too. There should be very little or maybe no thinking involved, kind of like the Amazon experience. People who buy this, buy this. But I'm wondering, have you looked at the AI solution for purchasing, and is that helpful? With that, thank you again.
I think I'm happy to jump in very quickly and then I'll turn it over to Kaylee. I think the impact that AI is going to have on purchasing over the next couple of years is just going to be dramatic. I mean, many of the e-procurement systems that governments are using already incorporate aspects of AI. I think in many ways, this has the potential to make purchasing less administrative in some ways, right? And devote further strategic attention to collaboration, to research and investigation. But I'll let Kaylee continue my answer.
Well, you're our AI expert, so I think that was fantastic. I was going to address some of your earlier notes, Mark, just around this idea of this disconnect between policy and some of these outcome goals that we hope to see. I think we address that in a couple of ways. One is really simply elevating the status of procurement so those messages can be heard by executive leadership in these jurisdictions. So we really think about how do we build the strategic capability of procurement leaders so that they are in a position to advocate and communicate when policy isn't aligning with what they want to see in terms of implementation, and really creating more feedback loops and conversations for executive leadership in cities and states to listen to their procurement chiefs when they're setting a strategic goal around sustainability or whatever else their policy priorities are. And then I think the second piece and important takeaway is what we're all talking about here today, which is how can the federal government be a leader? So many of the things cities and states are buying are informed by or governed by federal policy. And so how can we, position another feedback loop? How can you all hear what's going on at the city and state level in order to guide federal guidelines? And then how can the federal government take a bold stance that gives some more comfort and leadership in the space so that cities and states can follow? So those are some of the components, and we're happy to talk offline about really specific projects where we've helped cities or states communicate those challenges and see policy change on the ground. But these are great questions and the kinds of things that everybody's confronting day to day. Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership. Appreciate it.
Antonio, we're a little bit behind on time, so if you could make sure to
speak fast on my question. I got you. So I was very interested in the small business component that you spoke to, and particularly any examples or any initiatives that you may have seen that you think would be worth sharing in cases where states or local governments are finding a way to help make sure that the small businesses, and especially the underserved, underrepresented small businesses, are not being sort of left behind as this industry starts to really move fast. And any incentives, any kind of policy changes, anything that's increased inclusion that's had a demonstrated positive effect, be happy to hear or get some further information on it. And I'll lower my hand, and you've already lowered it, so move along.
One more question. Amlan, would you like to go ahead and speak?
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much. Wonderful presentation. And I specifically, well, given my experience working with departments of transportation, I specifically kind of latched on to your comment on low bid environments and how that is often getting in the way of innovation, particularly in the sustainability space. I was wondering, in your experiences, have you seen ways in which we're getting more best value projects versus low bid environments? And if that is what experiences you came across, especially working with state governments?
And what we'll do online is we'll let them address that and send us that comment, send us that response back due to the time that we have right now, because we are behind on time. And we'll make sure we'll get that information from you ladies. I would like to go ahead and pass this virtual podium over to our chairs, Ms. Troy Cribbs and Cassius Butts. I'm sure they have something eloquently to say to you, to all the guests.
Well, yeah, and thank you so much to all the guest speakers. This just reminds me of the federal acquisition community is very special, and I say that writ large. It's, you know, not only the people in government, but the people outside of government. It's a community of people who just want to help our country, you know, carry out its various missions, ranging from like national security to healthcare, whatever. And everyone is so passionate about it, and it's so inspiring. And we could talk all day as we could just demonstrate here. So I'm sorry, we have to cut this a little short because these have just been fascinating conversations, but we do have the 3 subcommittees to get to talk about our recommendations. So we will loop back. Thank you so much to the guest speakers for being here today. It's just fantastic conversations. And as I said, it will really help us jumpstart in the new year with further thinking. But I think we should jump ahead. We're going to go first to our acquisition workforce subcommittee. They have a couple of recommendations following up on our May recommendations. Very important recommendation following up on some comments that the GAP FAC made in response to a FAR rule. And I think it was in September that we did that it is the FAR rules intended at rewriting FAR Part 23, making it more strategic about sustainability. And then finally, a recommendation on an AI task force. So I want to hand it over to Nicole and Anne to jump in on all of this now.
Great, thank you, Troy. There we go. Why don't you go ahead and advance the slide, David? Thank you. I really want to thank Anne Rung, who's co-chairing this subcommittee with me, and the suite of members that we have here. As you can see, they come from very different perspectives. We have individuals from research, industry, government, individuals with applications in supply chain, procurement, and other areas. And this diversity is really reflected in the subcommittee's tasks and priorities and our recommendations as a whole. Next slide, please. So I just want to level set a little bit and describe the mission of our subcommittee, and that is to empower and equip the federal acquisition workforce to prioritize environmental outcomes and promote sustainability throughout the acquisition lifecycle. Our subcommittee has focused on 2 specific priorities. The first priority was really the emphasis of our first round of recommendations back in May, and that relates to identifying the essential pathways needed to make sustainability considerations a core competency in federal acquisitions. And 2 of our recommendations, as Troy mentioned, will be a follow-up on this specific priority. We'll have 2 other recommendations that focus specifically on identifying critical levers needed to empower the acquisition workforce to prioritize sustainability, and this is the key, with the least amount of effort. We want to make this easy. Next slide, please. So the first 2 priorities, as I mentioned today, are the follow-ups on our initial recommendations, third-party training and selection, and emphasizing experiential learning, which we have heard from our guest speakers already, the importance of this. We also identify the importance of this area. And then the remaining 2 are establishing a federal data standard and protocol and convening an artificial intelligence task force. Next slide, please. Before I jump into the recommendations, I want to identify who we engaged. And it consisted of a suite of more than 20 different experts across 5 federal agencies, GSA and EPA. Next slide, please. DOE, Interior, as well as IRS. And we also engaged representatives from the private sector, including vendors and technology developers. Next slide. This amounted to about 25 hours of speaker interviews, presentations, and discussions. And then the subcommittee rolled up its sleeves and utilized digital whiteboarding to make sense of all of the massive information that was coming our way. This was really essential to organize that information that we were curating from expert stakeholders, to organize what we saw around common themes, to identify the pain points, and then to begin to understand pathways forward towards addressing those pain points. All right, next slide. So our first recommendation is third-party training selection. Issue a request for information. The idea here is that as GSA embeds sustainability across the federal acquisition lifecycle, all acquisition workers are going to need basic climate training. As we heard from Jeff earlier today, that there is movement within this space, but we're going to build on that movement, recognizing that third-party trainers deliver a lot of climate mitigation training already that should be understood a bit better. So we recommend that GSA issue a request for information to learn more about these third-party training opportunities. Further, we suggest selection criteria in thinking about suitable third-party trainers. The first area we emphasize is reputation and independence. The idea being that the training organization should have a strong reputation for delivering high-quality training. That trainer should also be independent and not affiliated with a specific industry or a specific agency, ensuring impartiality and neutrality. The second area relates to adaptability and quality. The focus of the subcommittee here was looking at climate knowledge and regulations and social concerns as being issues that are constantly evolving. And so it's going to be important to ensure that learners are kept up to date, not just with current knowledge, but about those emerging concerns and trends. Additionally, this training needs to be accompanied by assessments to ensure effective learning and skill development. The third area that we focus on relates to a track record and affordability. That trainers should have a track record of consistently delivering high quality training and training that is reasonably priced, making it accessible to a wide range of learners without compromising quality. The fourth area is accessibility and continuous learning. So training should involve user-friendly platforms and delivery methods, recognizing that learners experience their learning in different ways, and having access to different modalities will be important, ensuring a more seamless learning experience. But also there need to be options for learners to tool up and continuously develop their skills. And this relates to our last emphasis area, which is scaling and networking, where the training organization should provide options for learners to scale or stack the number of credentials that they offer. And the training should also facilitate networking opportunities among the different learners, recognizing that fostering connections within the profession is going to be really vital as sustainability information gets shared and we reshape federal acquisition around sustainable practices. Next slide. Our second recommendation relates to emphasizing experiential learning. So as GSA considers its training options, and this is all training, including those offered by third-party providers, it needs to be looking towards emphasizing experiential learning. That experiential learning is an educational approach that emphasizes hands-on practical experiences. It involves learning by doing. There are four important elements that we suggest GSA consider as it assesses its experiential learning options. The first being hands-on learning. Here, the focus is on encouraging learners to integrate sustainability principles through skill-focused, grounded sustainability challenges that are relatable to federal acquisition, to showcase successful examples that help inspire learners to apply sustainable practices in their work, and then to encourage peer collaborations where they can share insights and strategies. This also connects with our first recommendation. The second area to consider is practical application. The participants we know tend to learn better when they can relate what they're learning to their work. And most work happens within teams, and so too should the experiential learning. Emulating situations that are similar to actual federal acquisition settings. And it should foster collaboration and relationship building within the acquisition community. The third area is integration and relevance, that learning materials and examples should closely mirror the complexities and challenges faced within federal acquisition. And it should accommodate federal acquisition professionals at varying levels of expertise, ensuring that newcomers and experienced professionals can benefit from the training. And then finally, experiential learning should encourage creativity and problem solving, drawing on a suite of learning techniques like ethical dilemmas, case assessments, simulations, sustainability debates, and managerial pitches about sustainability issues and ways to address sustainability challenges. And before we move on to recommendation 3, I'd like to pass the baton to Anne.
Thank you. If you could go to the next slide. So the next 2 recommendations are really around our second area of focus to find ways to empower the acquisition workforce to drive more sustainable outcomes with the least amount of effort. So in other words, how do we reduce the friction for them? And we believe one of the most effective ways to support the workforce is to provide accurate and reliable and consistent data to identify our product or service as meeting sustainability standards. And our proposal is that GSA develop and lead a cross-agency effort that establishes federal data standards and protocols for eco-label certifications and utilization. And this is feedback that we received across the board from buying organizations, suppliers, other stakeholders, and we realize it's a big thorny area to tackle, and believe GSA is very well positioned to be that convener and collaborator across the agencies. We provide recommendations around some suggested areas to focus on, but it is by no means comprehensive. But some of the areas that we heard loud and clear from various individuals that we spoke with were around 1, reviewing eco-label standards under product families. And it was described to us as certifications often occur at the product family level, but there may be products beneath that family product that are not compliant. And so we really heard that the acquisition professional could be at risk of purchasing a product that's not compliant just because it appears to be under a compliant family product category. And so we recommend that this be one of the areas that GSA dive into. And secondly, we recommend that as part of this effort, GSA work with suppliers. And we did hear from suppliers that shared some of their challenges around data, and that some of them have created infrastructure and processes to try and reconcile data across various federal databases that may be inconsistent. And they're doing their best to try and reconcile this data, but they may inadvertently miscategorize something as compliant or meeting certain standards. So we think it's really important that we both consider buying organizations as well as the suppliers who are important partners in this effort. We suggest that the task force focus on how they can provide additional critical information to the workforce around eco labels. And Specifically, some of the examples we heard are that data in some of the federal databases may be missing images, they may be missing manufacturing part numbers, specific information around product type and category. And all that information would be enormously helpful to both suppliers and buyers in ensuring the products that they have or intend to purchase match what is indeed meaning federal eco-label or sustainability standards. The fourth area, of course, is about standardizing data. And again, we know that's a big thorny issue, but federal agencies are sometimes using different data and storage standards during the development of their eco-label registries. And it makes it very difficult to merge databases across the federal government and integrate them within the existing procurement systems. And then finally, develop training and design feedback on the existing tools. And while more work needs to be done to ensure that we're providing the acquisition workforce and vendors consistent and reliable and comprehensive green product information, it's also clear that the workforce and vendors also require additional education and training on how to use some of the tools that are already there. And so resources such as the sftool.gov managed by GSA and GSA Advantages Environmental Program, ISLE, are just two examples where we have resources out there, and we certainly can do more to ensure that the workforce knows where they are and how to best use the tools that we have. If you go to the next recommendation, you just heard from Harvard that AI will indeed be profoundly changing how we do procurements. Well, it will probably profoundly change many things in our lives. And so following the White House's executive order on safe, secure, and trustworthy artificial intelligence and GSA's recent support of that executive order, we're going to recommend that GSA assess how AI may be an important tool to empower the acquisition workforce and really how it may be embedded into sustainability. And as a first step, we recommend that GSA convene a task force to assess the potential that AI holds and ensure that all those options and possibilities that AI could lend itself to really align with agencies' goals, privacy and security requirements, and the best interests of the public. Some agencies, IRS and Treasury, have begun this exploration with some success. We think there's some potential benefit of really using AI to support the acquisition workforce. Some areas that we think it has potential to impact, again, certainly not limited to these areas, are improved market research, regulatory conformance, just generally improved decision-making, helping to drive more data-driven decisions, and certainly around risk management. AI could help identify and manage procurement risk. So with that, I will turn it back to Nicole. Next slide, please.
Great, thank you, Anne. So those are 4 recommendations. Before we end our presentation, I'd like to forecast a bit with some next steps. So related to those next steps and future recommendations, we are planning to explore 2 additional areas in the upcoming months. The first relates to structural alignment. So back in May, we offered recommendations related to change management. We'd like to go back to some of those high-level recommendations and think more about the structural alignments that are needed within the agency to really move the change acceleration model forward. Some examples relate to assessing relevant job descriptions to include expectations about specialized sustainability training, aligning incentives internally within the organization, and creating criteria by which new acquisition professionals are hired so that they reflect the new expectations for sustainability, which based on the current job trends show that this is a potential to attract new talent within the agency as well. The second area that we plan on focusing on relates more to our second priority, and specifically on automation. So this is really identifying the critical levers that are needed to empower the acquisition workforce to prioritize environmental outcomes and promote sustainability. Our intention is to further explore opportunities related to these new and emerging technologies as a means to realize GSA's vision to embed sustainabilities into federal acquisition. Next slide. So before we close, I really want to thank the many individuals who generously gave their time to meet with us over the last 6 months or so. I also want to again thank Ann Rung, co-chair of the committee, as well as the members of the acquisition workforce subcommittee, and then open up conversations to the entire committee to ask if there's anything else that they would like to add before we move forward with Q&A and a vote.
I saw one question from Cindy. The question from Cindy was on protocols and standards. What about GSA and other federal suppliers eliminating the non-sustainable alternatives when proven sustainable products are available? Cindy, I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate on that a little bit.
Actually, and since
Cindy's
really,
in the public.
yeah, we're just addressing the members of the committee. So, yeah, but we'll capture that
fair
question.
Enough.
We'll definitely
Cindy,
capture that question for the record. Yeah.
Great question, and certainly something that we would recommend GSA as part of the cross-agency effort dig into further.
Gotcha.
Anything else from the subcommittee before we move on to open Q&A? Okay. All right. The floor is to the full committee.
Yeah, Boris, I think we hand it to you for the voting.
Yeah, so without further discussion, thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Anne, again for showcasing the great work of the subcommittee. So if we go to the next slide, what we're going to do now is for the committee members only, we're going to take each of these recommendations and we're going to put it to a vote. As you saw in the previous slide, yes, using the chat, you can put a Y, no, and an N, and then for abstain, you can put an A. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. And then David, thank you, David. By the way, David Cochen is doing a great job helping manage and move through all of the steps in the meeting here. And thank you, Skylar Holloway, as well. So David has put in the chat that we're voting on the first recommendation right now, which is third-party training selection. So I will go ahead and open up for voting for members only. And again, you have three options: Y, N, or A. Yes for Y, N for no, and A for abstain. And so we'll go ahead and quickly take a look. And we're going to go to each of these recommendations in the same manner. Okay, so again, we're giving it a minute, and I see, Mamie, you have a question. Yeah, go ahead, Mamie.
No, that's my yes.
Oh, that's your yes. I got you. Sorry. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, David, you want to go ahead and give me a count on the yes?
Hey, Boris, I'm sorry. On this view with the sharing, I can't see the chat very clearly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I got you. I see one. Yeah, Stephanie, you want to help me with the count? Just want to make sure I got it good. So I got a lot of screens.
It looks like we have a quorum on this vote.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So this one is approved to move forward. So we're gonna go ahead and vote on the next one, which is emphasize experiential learning. And Dave, if you wanna go ahead and put the chat to give us the.
I just did, Boris.
Okay, great. So we're gonna go ahead and then vote for emphasizing experiential learning. So we'll open up for voting right now. Members only. Go ahead, again, you have the option of yes, no, or abstain, using the Y, the N, or the A. And I see that Mamie raised her hand again, so we'll put that a yes for Mamie.
And Boris, apologies, I've been replying directly to David as a yes, but no surprise that I'm a yes.
Okay. No
And
worries.
I'd be worried if you weren't. Really worried. Oh, I got a direct message.
Good to go.
From Clyde, who voted yes as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I did that.
I did the same thing, Clyde.
Yeah.
You have a majority vote on this topic.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to the next one. The third recommendation, data standardization, collection, and training. So David, if you want to go ahead and drop the next one, we'll go ahead and start counting votes for the third recommendation, which is data standardization, collection, and training. Okay. And Stephanie, if you can help me with the count, that'd be great.
You have a majority on this.
Okay, great. And then we'll go to the last one, which is Artificial Intelligence Task Force. So we're opening up to vote for the last recommendation. Okay, voting on the very last recommendation, Artificial Intelligence Task Force.
A majority vote.
Okay, great. So we have adopted the 4 recommendations from the Acquisition Workforce Subcommittee. Thank you very much. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Troy to introduce our next subcommittee.
Yeah, and actually, I was going to turn it over to Cassius to.
Okay, sorry, Cassius, you're on, Cassius.
That's okay, thank you. Just up next, we're going to have the Industry Partnership Subcommittee recommendations, led by Chair Christian Seaver with General Dynamics, Information Technology, and Co-Chair Farad Ali with OCR LLC. With that being said, Kristen, take us away.
Great, thanks, Cassius. Thanks, everybody, and good afternoon. We can go ahead and advance. So for the Industry Partnership Subcommittee, we're going to be putting forward 3 recommendations for consideration today. So at first, though, would like to thank the subcommittee. As you can see, we have a well-represented group, diverse with experiences and constituencies, strong representation from small minority-owned businesses, which really is core to the mission of our subcommittee. We have expertise from science, large companies, and other industry verticals as well. So appreciate all the work of the subcommittee. If we can go ahead, we'll just remind folks, the mission of our subcommittee is really about identifying, engaging, and equipping a broader and more diverse supplier base. And we heard that in some of the presentations today, that we really are focused on keeping that front and center. And then with our current mandate from the GSA administrator, really with a focus on achieving the government's goals relative to sustainability, environmental justice, economic equity, and a resilient domestic supply chain that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle, that we also want to ensure that the supplier base is diverse, but also resilient as the government moves forwards with its goals and objectives. And we constantly remind ourselves with this that we want to be the bearers of a specific focus towards small, mid-sized, underrepresented, underutilized businesses and new entrants. So they can be one in the same, or they can be two separate types of entities, but really want to be able to focus on that so that new solutions can be brought to the government's challenges as they progress. If we go ahead, we've really been focused on two areas. We can go to advance the slide. Thank you. So one of the areas that we're really focused on is this concept of impactful engagement. So not just information sharing, actually, engaging with impact and purpose to meet the goals that we are going after. And the other area of focus is around, what are the metrics, motives, and methods that will allow individual businesses or the supplier pool as a collective to advance and excel in the areas that the government is looking for in sustainable procurement. So for today, if we advance the slide, please, we have 3 recommendations that we're putting forward. 2 are refinements of recommendations we submitted in May based off the feedback from GSA, which was very thoughtful and quite thorough. We appreciate that greatly. It really did help us refine kind of our aperture as we looked at these 2 recommendations. And then we'll be presenting a 3rd and new recommendation that we have been working on for the duration of the committee. We just weren't quite ready to present that one back in May. So the first recommendation is around the innovative new entrants, and it's much more refined around using an existing vehicle, challenge.gov, and we'll go through that at length this afternoon. The second recommendation around the maturity model is really about what is a good step to get moving forward on this. There's a lot of consensus that it's a great idea. It's something that's needed. But everyone we talk to is like, when you say, okay, how to get started, everyone kind of draws a blank on how to get their head around the scope of that. And then the lighthouse is this idea of networks. And I think we heard a little bit of that today, particularly from that second group of speakers from Harvard around networks of excellence and networks that can improve, and bring solutions to bear from their micro segments that they service. So we're pretty excited about that recommendation. If we go ahead, I'll go ahead and walk through innovative new entrants. And so, challenge.gov, where innovators are inspired to meet challenges big and small. And this is a already established mechanism. It's already governed under FAS, under the Technology Solution Center. And we really felt, after doing some deep dives on this and talking to some folks that are not in the government's traditional market research or areas that people might tap, specifically the venture capital community, and small minority-owned businesses in micro segments of verticals. So we spoke with the executive director of AEC Unites, which focuses on minorities excelling in construction and architectural business. So very interesting to hear their perspectives on what the government looks like from their perspective in versus the government's perspective out. And so we feel like challenge.gov will be a great opportunity to not only reach kind of what we're calling micro segments or areas of industry that we don't generally go after, but that might have very important creative solutions to the challenges that government has today. And secondarily, it would also allow the government to learn through this process about how to better market and find these communities. That's been another kind of common thread that we've heard throughout is we know who we know, we don't know who we don't know, who might have the solutions to the problems we have. So by going through this process, we think it can also be a learning process to better market and target to some of these different verticals. And lastly, and I think the second speakers today really said a few things that our recommendations, you'll hear a common thread, and it's about GSA sending a strong demand signal. All three of our recommendations have that component to it, in that it may not be the one winner of a challenge, but you are sending a broader signal that you are looking for innovative new entrants, that you are looking for novel solutions to challenges that face government today. And so we think that's critically important as GSA continues to go after its objectives. We can advance, please. So, you know, people who are not familiar with challenge.gov might be thinking, well, how does it work? And it's really a quite simple and straightforward process. And we've identified these 5 critical steps as kind of guiding principles to follow. But one is, you know, the key is identifying the problem sets. That's not what industry brings to government. That's what government would put out as a beacon to industry. What are those major problems trying to be solved, whether it is in a sustainable product, or how can services be more sustainable, and or are there particular processes improvements in government or acquisition? Well, we talked about the acquisition workforce. So this can be in any of those areas. Around those problem sets, then the agency and or the champion, you know, basically creates a strategy around that problem set and desired outcomes, leverages challenge.gov and announces prize competition, and invites the public to solve it. This was another interesting area where we got feedback, is really to be thoughtful and learn how to market a little differently. We had a guest speaker from the entrepreneurial community. And, you know, one of the things we talked about is, well, they're not on LinkedIn, they're on Signal, you know, so all these different communication channels of where these people are, where they communicate and who they communicate with is a sophistication that I think we would want to see improved as we go forward. You know, the participants create the solution and submit solutions to the problems, and then the agency evaluates and awards the prize to the winner as defined in the how the challenge is laid out. So that's kind of the mechanics of it. But if we go to the next slide, there's really, we think, some things for GSA to really be mindful of as we go forward with this type of recommendation. So one is being purposeful and intentional around soliciting across agencies about what are those key problem sets. Problems that require new solutions that aren't maybe readily known. That's one of the key elements of this. And then I think we heard this today also, was there's more problems than there are days in the year. So the key is, how do you prioritize or help prioritize what are those top priorities to create a small subset of challenges that could be run. Making sure that we have scope clarity and making sure that the desired outcome is clearly articulated and well known. The evaluation process is an opportunity to be more diverse and inclusive in thinking about what mindsets and what subject matter experts will be brought to bear to help evaluate the solution. Certainly members from the government team, members from the entrepreneurial community, domain experts relative to the challenge. So that in and of itself is a great way to broaden engagement. into industry. So it's not just the challenge and the winner, it's the process of going through this. As I talked about, really beginning to think differently about how and where GSA markets these challenges to ensure that we're able to effectively reach the target audiences. And then being thoughtful about the prize. We had some really good feedback from our focus groups around, it's not always just money. Sometimes it's access. Sometimes it might be a fast lane onto a government vehicle. Additionally, it's GSA and the government doesn't just learn from the winner. You start to begin to understand, we think, who these microsegments are and where they are, so that you can do broader market research. We see this initiative as being a feedback mechanism into the broader objective of GSA to modernize its market research systems. I think we can go ahead. So when you start to think about, I guess one of the things we thought might be something to consider is to really take a design thinking mentality to this versus transactional, like, oh, let's run some challenges. But no, to say, let's run some challenges and be thoughtful about it to see what it is we can learn to better understand how to find these novel solutions that are out there to some of our greatest challenges. And I think learning throughout the process is one of the key items that we discussed and heard from the folks we talked to. And then refine from that, be able to refine how challenge.gov markets back to the government to solicit more input for more challenges, and then how challenge.gov and those that are championing challenges then market more effectively out into these target areas. We can advance. So on that recommendation, so what we were envisioning is potentially starting with a pipeline of somewhere from 3 to 5, challenges that could be run, stop, learn from those, and then continue to expand on that program. So let me, we'll have Q&A, I believe, at the end. So switching gears on our recommendation number 2, which is about the maturity model, which is also a refinement from May. We're really focused on what might be a positive first step into establishing some sort of roadmap benchmarking for all of industry around what is most important to GSA relative to sustainability in federal procurements. This is a very focused effort around federal procurements, acquisitions, and how climate and sustainability considerations are embedded in that. And then industry builds capacity and competency around being able to do that, because the more members of the supplier base that can do that, the more broad and diverse a supplier base the government will have. And that's an overarching goal and objective. I think what's important here too is a couple of things we got feedback from GSA, and I'll go over some of that. Two things. One, we talked to the Council on Environmental Quality. We talked to EPA. We talked to former CISO of a federal agency who leveraged maturity models from a perspective of driving cyber maturity. And two things. One, everyone seems to believe that some sort of benchmarking tool would be invaluable, to the supplier base and would serve as an accelerant in driving businesses to be more capable of participating in federal acquisitions and meeting and or exceeding climate and sustainability objectives. And really the key there is exceeding. We want to be able to help move from compliance to a leadership role with the businesses that engage with the federal government. And then the second part is there's a lot of good activity, almost some subset of pieces of this type of work going on across government. And if there was a way to pull that all together, GSA could be able to send a much stronger signal. Actually, we saw some of the same key points were brought up in the Harvard presentation today. And then secondly, GSA has that unique opportunity through federal acquisitions to use that as a lever to pull that common thread across these agencies and to send a consistent demand signal out into the supplier base that this is important. And as one of our speakers said to us, and if it's important to the government, then it has to be important to those who want to do business with the government, and providing pathways to be able to achieve those compliance requirements is important. So let's go ahead to the next slide, please. So some of the groups we talked to, and that it would seem to be logical groups for this task force to maybe have members from and or first people to talk with, was the Category Management Office from FAS, GSA Office of Government-Wide Policy, the EPA Center for Corporate Climate Leadership, and the Council on Environmental Quality, all talking about doing things in these areas and how could we best connect the dots. We also recommend that GSA leverage the RFI process to solicit third-party support and how this could be pulled together. We had a lot of discussion on, should third party is great to be used for assisting, supporting, building out, but our recommendation is that this not be commercially supplied, sponsored type of model, because that can send mixed signals. Priorities can become misaligned, and there's challenges with that versus a government agency sending that beacon and demand signal out. Additionally, GSA as the purchaser should be, in our opinion, sending those demand signals clearly with what they're asking suppliers to do. And lastly, there still is an opportunity, and we weren't able to flush this out fully, and this may be something we can work on continuously, is there a role for third-party networking affinity groups, and this ties a little bit into our Lighthouse recommendation as well, for those groups to help be part of task force and or pulling together this type of model, because it is a heavy lift. We don't want to underestimate the lift around this, but we can't finish what we don't get started. And so the example that we were able to kind of draw upon was ACT-IACT and the work it did with IT modernization that's eventually supported FATARA compliance, right? So there was a model and a competency roadmap that suppliers could take a look at and build their competency and help with FATARA compliance. If we go to the next. So this is a recommendation that can appear to be kind of daunting, but the benefits of it, we feel make it a worthwhile recommendation and something important to go forward with, because this is a time-bound challenge in that, the goals that the government is putting forth and the objectives relative to climate change are only accelerating, and the timeline to get them done is only getting smaller. So we think it's really important that the government signal that it is taking these very intentional steps towards raising the sea level for all those that engage with the government. I think the other thing is right now we want to get compliant, but we really want to get ahead of the curve, right? We really want to move beyond compliance and get to a point where companies are thinking about how can they do more and move into a leadership role, whether that's by exceeding requirements, whether that's mentor protege, kind of ties into some of what we heard from HP, right? How can we do more and give back? Oh, can we go back one slide? I think this is like the Oscars. I'm getting the hook. So, and then lastly, I think, this would also help one of our key goals of the small businesses. Big companies have the resources to build their own roadmap. And they have the resources to build competency and capability very quickly as regulations and compliance change comes out. Very able to react. Small businesses, medium-sized businesses, not so much. So by having that beacon being sent out for a roadmap of how to do these things and build competencies and where to get resources, really would send a strong signal that GSA is serious about its efforts to ensure that small new entrants are able to compete in the federal supplier base with these new requirements. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Farad, who's going to talk to you about the Lighthouse.
Hey, thank you, Kristen. And I really want to thank Kristen also for her leadership of this committee. It's been really impactful in keeping us on task. And we also had really the whole committee has been engaging. I want to give a special shout out to Nigel and Keith and Mamie and Dave and Nicole. And then we've had some really guidance with Daryl and Antonio Dawson, having them on the committee. But I do want to also give a special shout out. I know that's not a government word, shout out to Stephanie for engaging us on this space. Lots of love there, and also to Dave and Boris for keeping us on task. I say all that to say that it's kind of like this Lighthouse model. It's a network of networks. We do nothing by ourselves. We wanted to make sure that we wanted to have the agility to be able to promote access. And we knew to promote access that included recruiting and identifying and retaining innovation. We think genius is not only with the big companies. We think genius is also represented inside smaller companies. And so we wanted to make sure they had a chance to understand the relatability to sustainability, renewable energy, and some of the top government priorities. And we heard that in both presentations before around how to make sure that we create pathways. And we thought the Lighthouse would be a way for us to show where this is happening. There's also some real facts out there that's going on right now. Post-COVID, post-economy, we've had a declining number of small business and underrepresented businesses in the federal supply chain. And that number has fallen to almost 121,000 businesses from in 2009 to 62,000 in 2022. That's a decline over 50%. And when you have that kind of decline, it can be disheartening if you don't continue to get opportunities to move forward. So we want to kind of increase the utilization and the number and create systems and structure to get back to that robust number, and also have those people not just to get businesses, but to be able to utilize. So this Lighthouse would be that for the community. We actually advance the next slide, please. So we thought that this would be having this network of networks inside, that we would create this ongoing networking engagement tool. We'll continue to provide some agility in promoting what's going on in the government, what's new, what are the things that we need to make sure that diverse businesses can engage in. Similar, like we heard from, again, the earlier presenters, recognizing if there are some things that we need to provide, if it's education, if it's capital, if it's transformation, for them to be competitive, to be able to engage, and so that they can be able to engage in the federal government space. We really want to strengthen the federal ecosystem. We recognize as the federal government, there's lots of systems, lots of different agencies. Sometimes y'all communicate very well together, and sometimes you don't. And so we figure that this Lighthouse will allow for there to be a nonpartisan, open opportunity for engaging new businesses and new entrants, so they can seek business engagement and be able to advance themselves outside of that, so we can move forward. And this is a call to action, right? We want to make sure that we have the kind of right partners, and those partners would be very similar to what we have on our committee, and also people that we know from behind. I think I've been told to go faster. Next slide, please. So our goal and our mission here is to assist with planning and creation of this launching of this Lighthouse Initiative. We want to facilitate and enhance collaboration with all the groups that we've talked about. We want to foster innovation with small businesses and GSA. That's our goal and our mission. And our target participation are all the businesses that we've been talking about, including startups, policymakers, and all the people that can create the ecosystem to go forward. Next slide, please. So we feel like could be a forward focus on us moving this forward. So we thought we'd have a 4-phase approach: planning, engaging, expanding, and continuing. Next slide, please. Kristen, back to you.
Yeah. All right, Farhad. I like that. That was a no huddle offense there. Very good. So
Omaha.
just real quick, we have a few other things that we're teeing up to potentially focus on going forward. One is a digital marketplace of best practices. We want to explore the power of leveraging this large suppliers to help drive some of these compliance and regulatory requirements in acquisitions with the smaller businesses. Third bullet, you'll notice higher level of data access, fidelity, and transparency. That came up in the AWS and also with the Harvard Business presentation today. So that could be something. And then really around how are we going to measure if any of this is working? And, what are the performance metrics going to be? And how do we collaborate around those metrics? So that's some of the forward focus for the subcommittee. I think with that, we're here for Q&A or voting.
Yeah, and thank you again, Kristen and Farhad. And as we're pushing our schedule is just falling a little behind, but we do want to give the opportunity here for any questions that the committee may have on any of these recommendations before we go into voting.
Not a question, but just a congratulations on just a really excellent agenda and trying to innovate of how we get new entrants into the federal marketplace, educate them on what the federal government really needs in the whole area of sustainability, and then to create this lighthouse effort, which to me is an example of how this could be relevant not only for sustainability efforts, which we're focused on right now, but just for anything that the government would need and to get out and reach businesses that we're not reaching right now. So just wanted to offer huge kudos to the subcommittee on these recommendations. And I think they're just really exciting ones that will be very promising. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Troy.
Well, thank you, Troy. In that case, let's go ahead and advance the slides. And we're going to use the same process that we did for the acquisition workforce subcommittee. So we're going to take each recommendation one at a time and using the chat. Again, your 3 options, you can say yes, no, or abstain. So Y, N, or A. And we're going to start with the first one. Identify, engage, and onboard innovative new entrants, leveraging challenge.gov. And again, Stephanie, I'll ask you if you will help me with the count. That'd be great. Okay, so it's the opportunity for all the members to vote. Can you have the 3 options? Yes, no, or abstain?
Are we still on number 1? Sorry, I lost track.
Yes, we're voting only on number 1.
Okay,
so we're only voting on number 1.
Yeah, we have a majority vote on that one.
Okay. Thank you. So at this point, let's go ahead and open up voting for number 2, which is implement the GSA task force to explore partnerships and next steps for advancing maturity model. So we're voting on the second recommendation, which is the maturity model recommendation. And we're using the chat to take the vote. Okay, members voting on number 2.
There's a majority vote for this recommendation.
Okay, and then we'll go to the third and last recommendation, which is the Lighthouse and Network of Networks.
There's a majority vote on this recommendation.
Alrighty, great. So the 3 recommendations from Industry Partnership Subcommittee have been adopted and will be moved forward to GSA. Excellent. Given that we are way behind time, we would like to bring up our next subcommittee. I'm going to take it back to you, Troy. If you do need a break, please, by all means,
Well,
take a break.
if people are okay, just forging on, I think we're making great progress. If everyone's ready, I think we should turn to policy and practice.
All right, let's
go on
continue.
it. We're doing great. Congrats,
Yeah.
everybody. Luke, turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Perfect. Next slide, David. Good afternoon, Administrator Carnahan, Associate Administrator Broomfield, Jeff Kozes, Troy, Cassius, colleagues, members of the public, and friends. As you know, my name is Luke Bassis. I'm the Director of Procurement at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. It's my pleasure to serve as the Chair of the Policy and Practice Subcommittee. I'm joined today by David Wagger, the Chief Scientist for the Institute for Scrap Recycling Industries. We're going to begin today's presentation with some background on the subcommittee and how we approach this critical milestone for the delivery of our second round of recommendations. David and Richard Butel from Cirrus Analytics will walk through the subcommittee's recommendation related to PFAS. Then David, Anish Tilak from the Rocky Mountain Institute, and Kimberly White from the American Chemistry Council will provide the subcommittee's recommendation related to reducing human health risks in federal acquisitions. I'll speak to the subcommittee's recommendation to the GSA to institute a sustainable procurement center of excellence. And finally, Amlan Mukherjee from WAP Consulting will end the discussion with a heads up on what's coming next for the subcommittee, some topics we're likely to tackle next. I also want to recognize the rest of the subcommittee. The work we've done has very much been a group effort. Leslie Cordes, Nicole Darnall, Antonio Das, Mark Hayden, Jenny Romer, Steve Schooner, Stacy Smedley, and Nigel Stevens. This has been a phenomenal group to work with and a true example of how diverse voices and points of view unquestionably lead to better discussions, better analysis, better decisions, and better outcomes. Next slide. The subcommittee began our work in December, and we proudly presented our recommendation on single-use plastics in May. In the time since then, we've worked through many potential intellectual strings of discovery, looking for recommendations that were actionable, would encourage innovation, streamline the acquisition process, accelerate programs towards sustainability in measurable ways while ensuring our diverse supplier base was never left behind. We sought recommendations that could both inform and influence GSA leadership in a manner consistent with our mission. And today we proudly present 3 additional recommendations. Next slide. Today's recommendations have been informed by more than 18 speakers and contributors, some of whom did so out of a common embrace of a similar vision for the future of public acquisition, some of whom reached out to us and offered information on their own, leads and suggested areas of study, and a few who had no idea who we were, but took the call anyway and spent time sharing their thoughts and contributing to the work we see here today. I want to recognize a few of our public subcommittee meeting presenters whose work directly contributed to the contributions you'll hear today. Patricia Dillon, Global Electronics Council, Sarah Dahl, Safer States, and John Reeder, the Environmental Working Group. Next slide. So the path to this wave of recommendations began by revisiting our original cluster of ideas and trying to determine which avenues to pursue. All of this was occurring in the context of a rapidly evolving world of executive orders and proposed rules that both influenced and affected how we approach this work. I think Steve Schooner may have said it first, but the work of this subcommittee is very much like trying to boil the ocean. And in the end, instead of trying to boil the ocean, we looked internally to this eclectic group of experts in many fields. And we said, what expertise, what passion, what experience do I bring to the table? Why am I on this subcommittee? And how can I use that knowledge to initiate a recommendation that's meaningful to the GSA? We divided into several task groups based on these common interests and developed today's presentation. These 3 recommendations reflect issues that this subcommittee is deeply passionate about and feels strongly can impact the way the GSA does business and approaches acquisitions in a manner that promotes sustainability and innovation. The PFAS task group has come up with a proposal to reduce acquisition of materials and products likely contain PFAS, which is known to have an impact on human health. Next, an approach on reducing human health risks in federal acquisitions that looks past PFAS to other risks from possible exposure to chemicals. And finally, an idea that the states could be the petri dish of procurement innovation led to the concept of a center of excellence, an opportunity for the GSA to display national leadership on sustainable acquisition and use its power to multiply the impact of sustainable procurement practices and policies to all levels of government. Next slide. David and Richard, will you take us through PFAS?
All right. Well, thank you, Luke, for the introduction. Again, my name is David Wagger, Chief Scientist of the Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries. I think, as you'll see through the recommendations ahead, there are many threads that went through Hewlett-Packard's presentation and also Harvard's GPL presentation, and also the recommendations of the acquisition workforce and the industry partnerships. And they're all kind of connected. They push and pull on each other. And you might see threads of that through this. So our first recommendation concerns reducing PFAS in federal procurement. Overall, GSA should begin processes to identify products that may contain PFAS and to reduce acquisition of products that may contain PFAS in federal procurement. Our recommendations, our initial recommendations, are consistent with our mandate to recommend actionable changes that encourage innovation and accelerate demand of goods and services to achieve measurable progress on climate and sustainability goals. And here we're really looking at sustainability goals, although there certainly is a climate impact to it. Next slide, please. So some background. As the largest purchaser, the US government has a tremendous opportunity through procurement to reduce demand for PFAS and acquisition of PFAS in federal procurement. The US government has recognized PFAS as a human health and environmental issue, which makes this issue front and center. Activities to reduce federal procurement of PFAS are currently underway. This is not new, but we see in the future there may be some new requirements pursuant to regulation and legislation that it'd be good to get ahead of and not be caught behind the curve. And while these policy and legislative initiatives are essential, they must be codified and reinforced through the formulation of specific procurement and acquisition practices that advance the eventual goal of a PFAS-free supply chain. Next slide, please. So, there's some considerations in coming up with recommendations. I think we heard this earlier, the federal acquisition workforce is historically and currently understaffed and burdened with innumerable and often competing or conflicting legislative and regulatory policy mandates, including many social and economic considerations. And therefore, it's essential to have clear and unequivocal guidance. We don't want people guessing. We want them to know what to do, in individual situations. Also, avoid unintended consequences, such as regrettable substitutions or other regrettable situations that have adverse environmental or human health impacts. At the same time, given the ubiquity of PFAS in so many different aspects of the economy and products and materials, and given that there may not be current substitutions for them, exemptions should be considered for key priorities such as national defense, disaster recovery, disability accommodations, medical and personal protective equipment. Next slide, please. Rich, I'll turn it over to you.
So in considering these potential approaches, we found that there is an existing and very strong legislative and regulatory foundation for our proposals, referencing both the recent executive order, the OMB memo, and the federal sustainability plan. And in looking through that, we felt that our work and our recommendations are completely consonant with their goals and objectives. And going forward, additional codification in the FAR and the DFAR would serve to ensure success in terms of these goals and recommendations. Over.
Next slide, please. So we actually have 2 slides of initial recommendations, and our group recognized, and I want to recognize Jenny Romer of EPA, which is also part of our task group with Richard and myself on PFAS, is that we need a multi-pronged approach. There isn't just one approach, and many of these are interacting and rely on each other. So GSA should consider product categories that have already been identified by other state and federal programs. We're not the first to think about PFAS, but we want to take advantage of work that others have already done. Also, it's necessary to ascertain which PFAS to address more generally, which might require a phased approach. Not every product category that the government procures might have a substitute for it, and it might be based on product categories like furniture or carpeting or other types of things that may be farther down the substitution curve away from PFAS. Continue to utilize eco-labels as a method for identifying products that don't contain PFAS. We're not suggesting a PFAS eco-label specifically. Again, we need products to meet multiple attributes, not just PFAS, but also less climate impact, less environmental impact, less human health impact. PFAS happens to be one of the metrics of that. So, and that plugs into, I believe it was acquisition workforce number 3 about federal data and standardizing eco-label utilization certification. Also address PFAS through updating contract language, which be things like government-wide class deviations or on prioritized products. There are certain products that may be first to go through the PFAS reduction process. Next slide, please. Additional, incorporate into GSA tools for ease of use. And we've heard about GSA Advantage, Green Procurement Compilation, Sustainable Facilities or SF tool product search. Those things can be used to advance reducing PFAS in the supply chain. We heard from HP and also Harvard about supplier outreach by asking suppliers whether certain products or product categories contain PFAS. I think what we recognize is that there isn't a lot of information about where PFAS is known to be, let's say, used or acquired in government practice, although we can have a good idea given there's information about product categories that have PFAS in them. So we need to really figure out where it is, and that would be one aspect of beginning to get it out of the federal supply chain. Provide supply chain incentives. We heard about the recommendation from IPS on challenge prize competitions through challenge.gov. That would just be one example of a supply chain incentive. We need to find alternatives, but more importantly, scale them up. It may be necessary to have an initial solution, but to the extent that it's something that the government procures in high quantities, that needs to be scaled up as quickly as possible. So we want to incentivize that as well. And then lastly, develop in-house sustainability expertise. And I'm jumping ahead here to things like Sustainable Procurement Center of Excellence. That also ties in with acquisition workforce and training. This is really one example of training. There would be materials developed for workforce training on PFAS aspects. Next slide. So to conclude all of this, the US government has recognized PFAS as a human health and environmental issue. The GSA has tremendous opportunity through federal procurement to reduce demand for PFAS and acquisition of PFAS. GSA can build on existing efforts to reduce federal procurement of PFAS and be ready to implement expected future PFAS-related requirements. GSA should adopt these recommendations to leverage the power of federal procurement to reduce PFAS in procurement as part of its overall effort on sustainable acquisition. So that concludes PFAS. Next slide, please. So reducing human health risks in federal procurement might be what I would call, and I think our group would call, that is Kimberly Wise-White and Anish Chilak, of a sort of a general case where PFAS is a specific case. We're trying to get ahead of things and look to the future. So GSA should adopt the recommendations below to develop improved procurement processes to reduce human health risks associated with federal procurement through science-based review and evaluation, ingredient and chemical disclosure, use of exposure and hazard information, and establishment of preference hierarchies. Next slide, please. Anish, would you like to take over now?
Sure. Yes. And so as background about why we decided to focus on this topic, as David mentioned, PFAS is a specific case, but there are a number of additional chemicals of concern. And so this is just getting the ball rolling at GSA to develop some pilot projects to assess chemistries that go beyond PFAS. So going through this slide, we're looking here to ensure the safety of federally procured products and address any risks from exposure to chemicals and incorporate them into sustainable acquisition policy and practice. And so a real focus of this group was on improving the disclosure of ingredients. So GSA knows what chemicals are in the products that are being purchased. So beyond thinking about assessment and mitigation of exposure, the first step is really about understanding what's in the products themselves. So the recommendation really focuses on that aspect, which is improving ingredient disclosure, which will then inform decision making. And finally, the recommendations offer guidance on how GSA can take meaningful next steps to improve the procurement processes around reducing human health risks. And as mentioned, really focusing on improving ingredient disclosure to support informed decision making in the procurement process. Next slide. I'll pass it to Kimberly, I believe, for this one.
Thanks, Anish, and thanks, David. One of the things that we recognized as we were looking at trying to reduce human health and environmental impacts through the procurement process is that it had to be a science-based approach, and really making sure that we tried to consider how you can take in consideration both toxicity and exposure-related information, and really try to build a framework in understanding and applying that to procurement purchases overall. And as Anish mentioned, one of the things that we recognize throughout this process is that there's not really an effective way currently through the GSA that they understand which chemistries are built into the products, and to have a way to assess whether or not there's an opportunity to reduce human health exposure when a risk has been identified. And so as you'll hear from David here shortly, that we've identified a few recommendations that can start the GSA on a path to start considering both toxicity and exposure related information and build that into the hierarchy when they're considering both sustainability and climate needs, so they can take all of that information in consideration when they're making their procurement purchases. This is also critically important when you think about looking at chemistries overall, because all chemistries are not the same. And so it's important to take all of that information into consideration when you're thinking about making alternative choices for procurement. And so with that, I will turn it over to David to talk through the recommendations.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Anish and Kimberly. So for recommendations, GSA should identify subset of procurement categories, for example, building materials, cleaning supplies, to pilot the inclusion of preferred procurement criteria for materials and products that include chemical ingredient disclosure. Also, develop with relevant federal agencies such as EPA, a list of chemistries that are currently being evaluated as high priorities and the product categories that are being evaluated and considered by the federal agencies. Again, chemistries might match to particular products, so we need to consider both aspects. Work with relevant federal agencies to share and incorporate available alternative assessments that have been developed or are being developed by other agencies. EPA has had a process for alternative assessments, which is now part of the Safer Choice program. And then lastly, move toward implementation and institutional capacity building through pilot projects. And this would follow the implementation of the above recommendations. So that is the path that we suggest GSA take. Next slide, please. So to conclude, ensuring the safety of federally procured products and addressing the potential risks due to possible exposure to chemicals are important objectives to incorporate into the federal process for sustainable procurement. Development of improved procurement processes for reducing human health risks, and can be realized through multiple approaches, including, as we mentioned, science-based review and evaluation, ingredient and chemical disclosure, use of exposure and hazard information, establishment of preference hierarchies. GSA should adopt these recommendations for reducing human health risks associated with federal procurement as part of its overall efforts on sustainable acquisition. So I'll turn it back over to Luke with the next set of recommendations.
Thank you. Our third recommendation today is that the GSA should establish a sustainable procurement center of excellence to educate, accelerate innovation, share information, and establish best practices that serve as a resource for all federal agencies, states, and local municipalities looking to advance sustainability and acquisitions. Next slide. So we'll start with some background. According to NASPO's 2022 survey of state procurement officials, 34 states have at least one green or sustainable procurement policy. 28 states have statewide contracts offering green products. 20 states have green purchasing policies or programs. 15 have executive orders mandating green purchasing. Each one of these programs and policies is different, each one defined by the parameters of each jurisdiction's decision-making authority, and each of them achieving different outcomes. And this doesn't include local jurisdictions like New York City or Portland, Oregon, who have implemented sustainable procurement measures that go beyond or are different than what the states they sit in. Every state, every city, every local municipality that's adopted an approach has done so in a different manner, with more adopting green procurement policies every day. This really is the Wild West of innovation when it comes to sustainable procurement policy development. And there is no centralization of efforts or common principles, practices, or approaches. The GSA sits at the center of this opportunity for innovation, already serving as a resource to many state and local jurisdictions attempting to increase their knowledge and implementation of green acquisitions and the tools necessary to do so. The GSA's incredible resources like Sustainable Facilities Tool and the Environmental Program Aisle are all heavily relied upon already by states to inform their own green acquisition programs. Next slide. With all that background in mind, we didn't begin this exercise thinking we would end up recommending a center of excellence. The center of excellence concept evolved from an idea that the agility of the states to implement sustainable procurement policies could serve as a source for potential recommendations for GSA. We wanted to find out what worked, what didn't, and identify and propose things that had worked elsewhere that might make sense for the GSA. We researched procurement policies throughout the country. We met with officials from New York State, Minnesota, Massachusetts, procurement officials, all eager to share their ideas and progress and thoughts. We also met with a couple of industry groups that track and work with states on implementing sustainable procurement policies, the Responsible Purchasing Network, the Product Stewardship Institute. We heard about a lot of concepts that could serve as the basis for a recommendation. such as the stewardship model, where producers or manufacturers are contractually responsible for minimizing the product's environmental impact, including disposal or end-of-life management. We heard about how the implementation of green policies was accompanied by technical assistance and training, so small and certified firms could build capacity towards meeting new and green requirements. We also discussed manners in which ways states were publicly reporting their sustainable acquisition KPIs and results in order to track progress, build support, and help decision makers make decisions. We also heard about how states have increasingly adopted, and Harvard mentioned this as well, an approach which requires that certain purchases be made using a green specification. Green spec usually sets specific aspirational requirements for a product with the intention of ensuring a green or greener version of a product is purchased. For example, the spec for furniture might include a percentage for recycled content or that it's sustainably sourced. That same spec may differ between New York and Massachusetts, and the GSA has its own version of those requirements for furniture, which are not the same as either New York or Massachusetts. Another idea floated by the states is the concept of incorporating an evaluation process, and we heard Harvard talk about this earlier, for vendors' performance against certain green criteria and KPIs to assess whether or not to do business with them or how to score them on a competitive content in a competitive process. So if a firm demonstrated better performance on certain criteria, they could get more points and possibly win a contract. It was these last two ideas that we heard from state representatives that planted the seed for a center of excellence. What we heard from officials who spoke about both of these concepts is that they both needed leadership on a national level, and the states would welcome a role for the GSA to be that lead. There's currently no structure. There's no coordination between the states. There's no dialogue. There's no forum for state and local municipalities to share these concepts, to understand what's worked, to understand what doesn't, to set standards, establish common practices, inform each other, and educate. The handful of conversations we had only scratched the surface, but showed the enormous potential of what could take place if there was better coordination. A standard set of green furniture criteria, a standard matrix of KPIs and green performance criteria upon which to evaluate a firm. It doesn't sound like much, but if we can find some consistency in approach, when we add the $700 billion of GSA spend with the $2 trillion of state and local spend, the potential is enormous to move markets and provide some predictability to our industry partners. So where could this kind of best practice analysis and coordination take place? That's how we landed on the concept of a center of excellence. Next slide. So what is a center of excellence? The GSA already has several with a common mission to accelerate IT modernization. Generally, it's when an organization pulls together a group of people with specialized skills whose job is solely to provide leadership and disseminate knowledge within an organization. The Department of Homeland Security also has a center of excellence, which includes defined interaction with external stakeholders, unlike the GSAs. The Homeland Securities are university-led research networks that anticipate threats and challenges and coordinate with federal, state, and local governments as well. Customs and Border Patrol has 10 centers of excellence. They were also born as the result of a recommendation from a federal advisory committee, just like this one. Procurement centers of excellence have become fairly common. Imagine a resource within your organization where leaders, knowledge, training, and expertise is all pulled together and shared across an organization to enhance best practices. The state of Maryland and Rockland County, New York, both have procurement centers of excellence. And our friends at Harvard earlier today talked about their procurement excellence network. That is very much the type of network that we're talking about, the sharing of best practices, a hub where materials, templates, and how-to guides can be shared. So our recommendation today is that the GSA move to implement a sustainable procurement center of excellence with a mission to improve coordination amongst public bodies and provide leadership to develop and disseminate best practices to advance sustainable procurement at all levels of government. This is not a concept that's well developed, and there's not a lot of examples out there to model. The GSA would be one of the first that we're aware of. The closest example we found is the Welsh government, who's been piloting a procurement center of excellence, where the initial focus is to support their net zero goals. They've launched a website that's in beta testing. It has resources. It could serve as an informational resource if the GSA decides to move forward in pursuing this recommendation. Next slide. So the proposal today is to advance the concept of a center of excellence. The structure itself, which stakeholders will play a role, will be subject to further study and is really going to depend specifically on the mission. While we envision a structure that would include or be heavy with procurement officials from state and local government, the GSA could also seek out other partnerships like universities with sustainable procurement expertise. If the concept is one the GSA is interested in developing a mission, establishing a structure, and determining those roles, what roles stakeholders will have is probably the next logical step. Next slide. So in conclusion, we really believe that the GSA should move forward with the required steps to create a sustainable procurement center of excellence. The risk of inaction is real. The presenters from Harvard earlier today highlighted the momentum that's happening at the state and local level. Neha said the federal government can be the standard bearer. And that same ask is at the heart of this recommendation. The entire Harvard presentation is exactly the kind of dialogue and interaction that could and should be happening between the GSA and state and local governments through a center of excellence. They also noted that as more states are adopting, climate goals, those new entrants are going to start searching for procurement approaches to meet those goals. And it's going to make today's, Wild West world of innovation look tame compared to what comes next if we don't have something to focus on, some standard bearer. How could the furniture industry respond to products if there were 50 different specs for green furniture? How can small certified or disadvantaged businesses seek to provide green products and plan and respond to that type of chaos? Now imagine the GSA convening the Center of Excellence to seek input from the states and review green furniture specs and develop a national standard, or where the GSA could convene the Center of Excellence for a deep dive in state processes related to vendor evaluations and develop a matrix that could be the standard for all RFP criteria nationally. The benefits of a unified approach are tangible and real, and the time for action is now. This is our recommendation, and we look forward to feedback from the GSA. Next slide. Now, Amlan Mukherjee is going to give a brief synopsis of some of the areas the committee is contemplating looking at next. Amlan?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Luke. The committee is exploring the development of a recommendation on using lifecycle assessment based type 3 ISO labels that conform to ISO standards. These are, for examples, are environmental product declarations. What is unique about them is that they're quantitative and third-party verified. Specifically, this is going to build on some of the recommendations we've been talking about so far. It'll be based on a principles-based framework that is being investigated. A framework that can support the consistent and fair use of such labels for procurement purposes, emphasizing sustainability of the procured materials, as well as the long-term performance of the assets owned or leased by GSA. In addition, in support of recommendations made by our colleagues earlier today, we are continuing to further explore the relevant data infrastructures that will be necessary to support the use of type 3 labels and conformance requirements when such labels are used in procurement. This is particularly relevant to GSA as GSA is already currently running a pilot for 150 plus infrastructure projects where they're requiring EPDs, environmental product declarations, type 3 labels for asphalt, concrete, flat glass, and steel nationwide. We hope to return in May with a recommendation that will support GSA's sustainable procurement methods using these quantifiable third-party verified labels for products across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Amlan. Questions?
Yeah, Mark, go ahead. You're on mute.
This is more of a comment. I was with Luke when this was an evolution as he's described. We didn't say, oh, this is what we want to set out to do. It was a learning experience, a feedback loop, and an ultimate response. And I wholly endorse it. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that.
Denise.
Yes, I also wanted to co-sign the Centers of Excellence because I think they could also, as you've alluded to some in here, be a way to find out more ways to get the diverse businesses and understand what some of their, not just some of what their challenges are, but also ways to help identify small businesses and diverse businesses that are already working on these issues at the state and local level that could provide a natural pathway to them up into the federal space.
Great comment, Denise. I totally agree.
All right, so hearing no more discussions, I would like to move to the next slide. And we're gonna use the same process that we've used for the other two subcommittees. So we're gonna take one recommendation at a time. And at this point, so David, you're gonna put a chat right before we start. There we go. So at this point, we're gonna start voting on the first recommendation. This is reduction of PFAS in federal procurement. And so we'll give you the opportunity to vote. And then Stephanie is gonna help us by counting the votes. I see Mamie has raised her hand. That's indicating a yes. As I said before, this is the opportunity for just the members to use the chat to vote.
This has received a majority vote.
Okay, so at this point, we are going to go ahead, David, and drop the, there we go. We're ready to vote now on the second recommendation, which is reducing human health risk associated with federal procurement.
This recommendation has received a majority vote.
Okay, so we'll go on to the next recommendation and last, which is the Sustainable Procurement Center of Excellence recommendation. And so let's go ahead and open up the voting for number 3, Sustainable Procurement Center of Excellence.
This recommendation has also received a majority vote.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. So we have all voted, you all have voted on the 3 recommendations from the Policy and Practice Subcommittee. So they will all be adopted, and also all 10 recommendations will make their way into the recommendations report. We are running behind schedule. However, we do want to open up for a couple of minutes here for any public comments that we may have. You can also use the Q&A feature. You can use our email address, gapfac@gsa.gov, for any questions or comment you have. But we do have a couple of minutes here that I did want to open it up, and that we might just push a little bit beyond 4:30, because I did want to take the opportunity for some closing remarks from our leaders here that have sat through the meeting so far. So opportunity for public comment at this time. Again, feel free to use the Q&A chat. I don't know if Skylar, you wanted to give any other further instructions.
Yeah, so we do have a hand raised, Katie Day. I'm going to allow her to talk.
Okay, Katie, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, yes, we can.
Fantastic. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Katie. I'm the Senior Manager of Science and Policy at the Surfrider Foundation. And for nearly 40 years, Surfrider has been doing education, engagement, and advocacy to build awareness about the impacts of single-use plastics and advance policies that eliminates easily avoidable plastics and then promote reusables and better alternatives. So I just want to thank Associate Administrator Crystal Brumfield and Jeff Kozes at GSA for their commitment to implementing executive orders referenced throughout this meeting, and of course to this committee for completing and submitting that spring 2023 recommendations report and all of the work since. For my comments today, I'm really highlighting recommendation 6 regarding the reduction of single-use plastics and packaging. That purchasing power that GSA holds provides an incredible opportunity to push the U.S. in a more sustainable direction, with trickle-down benefits to community members and small businesses also working to purchase sustainable products, as well as to support proactive vendors at all sizes and scales. So we look forward to reviewing the upcoming release of the proposed rulemaking mentioned by Jeff. To learn more about this process, GSA is recommending for confirming single-use plastic-free packaging. We also look forward to learning more about the federal data standards and protocols recommended by the Workforce Subcommittee today, as well as similarly by the Policy and Practice Subcommittee. I'm so grateful to see a lot of these recommendations moving forward, ensuring consistency across even current federal product lists and standards, with current bio-preferred products ranging from 40% to 100% bio-based and relying on different compostability requirements, some home compostable, others requiring industrial composting infrastructure that's just not available to the vast majority of Americans right now, plus with ranging toxicity testing requirements. It's problematic, and not to mention the range in procurement policies at the local and state level that Luke just highlighted. With this historical lack of national leadership, states and localities had to take it into their own hands to advance sustainable purchasing protocols. So proactive federal leadership, with GSA being in a great position now to take that on with better coordination, would just be extremely valuable. I also love the Policy and Practice Subcommittee recommendation regarding protocols for suppliers to disclose ingredients and chemical composition. I hope food serviceware is part of that initial subset of categories included. There's just so much opportunity for data and eco-label standardization, transparency, best practice review, and training, including through this recommendation of the Center for Excellence. So thank you so much for encouraging this. And then in all of these efforts, including the upcoming rulemaking process, just hope there's that sincere intention to not advance regrettable substitutes, as was warned against by this committee in the initial recommendations report, or cause reliance on practices that put frontline communities at public health risk, such as through incineration and chemical recycling. We also hope that reusable ware and refill opportunities, where possible, are core to the approach and procurement practices, including the use of extended producer responsibility that support reuse and take-back opportunities, like what Julia Hewlett-Packard referenced in regards to their printer cartridges earlier on this meeting. Finally, in addition to incentives, which are powerful and so impactful, we also look forward to seeing what mandates, explicit roles and responsibilities, and timelines are included. So thank you again for this update, for all of the progress that you all have made and hard work that you're doing on this, and the opportunity to join today.
All right, thank you, Katie. Thank you. Skylar, did we have any other?
That was it for the public attendees for their hands raised.
Okay. And again, we would appreciate any comments that you may have. Please communicate with us via our email address, gapfac@gsa.gov. And as I said, I would like to push past a little bit our 4:30. That's what we're hoping to end, because I really do want to give Troy an opportunity to close things up. And then also Jeff and Crystal, if you're still around, we'd love to hear a couple words from you as well. But Troy.
Oh, well, I will be just very brief and say, first and foremost, I am so appreciative of all the expertise that all the GAPFAC members bring to this committee, and just think it's wonderful how we've been proceeding with a series of recommendations that we're bringing up by consensus, and that GSA seems receptive to and happy about, and it's so exciting to see them moving forward. So I just want to thank everybody for their hard work again. There were a couple of members of GAPFAC who couldn't be with us today that I just want to call out. Jenny Romer, very instrumental in the Policy and Practice Subcommittee, couldn't be with us today. Incredible expertise, particularly on the PFAS and reducing human health risk recommendations. Daryl McKissick couldn't be with us today. Very active on the Lighthouse recommendation. So I did just want to call them out since they couldn't be here today. Again, just thank you all so much. I am just so encouraged by the progress we're making. And again, I think that a lot of our recommendations are really just helping to strengthen acquisition as a whole, where our priority is on sustainability, but everything we're working on, I think really also just for the most part, just helps with the training of the acquisition workforce, the outreach to industry, all the things that you would want to strengthen acquisition, no matter what the topic is that we're talking about. So just wanted to extend a big thank you to everybody. And then Cassius, turn it over to you for any closing remarks you want to make.
No, just thank you, Troy. I just want to thank everyone for your time and your attention today, and thank for all the hard work, the chairs, co-chairs and members, and our guest speakers as well too, have definitely added value to what this committee is all about. So thank you again. And we look forward to going into 2024 with a clear, sharper perspective on this committee. So it's been a great deal. Of course, thank you, of course, Jeff, Crystal, our administrator as well too, Stephanie, Skylar, everyone who's really just put in the work behind the scenes, because it does take a lot, and your efforts are always duly noted. So thank you very much. Boris?
Thank you, Cassius. So Jeff and Crystal would like to give you an opportunity for a few words.
Okay, Boris, appreciate that. Want to thank Julian Kelsey for the HP presentation. Really intriguing, interesting approach and definition of sustainability. Gave us a lot to think about. Really appreciate the comments of Kaylee, Neha, and Elena. Fascinating hearing the approach that Harvard's been taking and some of the interaction with state and local government. Want to congratulate the committee. A really interesting combination of big, bold, imaginative recommendations, things like the AI task force, the Lighthouse, the Center of Excellence, really huge, innovative thoughts, coupled with things that are smaller, shorter term, more implementable. One of the things that was hugely helpful to us in the first round was the written report. Having the opportunity to then take it, to share it across the agency, to digest it, to ask questions, to really make sure that we understood at a deep level what you all were recommending. And after hearing this presentation the last few hours, cannot wait to actually read the report, talk about that with folks across the agency, and figure out the best path forward on all this. And finally, Boris, just a huge thank you to you, to the entire team for managing this effort. David, I know, is doing a ton of work behind the scenes. Thank you. Appreciate Skylar and Stephanie. You and Boris are an amazing team. And we worked the captioners particularly hard today, so thank you to them as well for their tolerance and patience.
Yeah, Jeff, and I also did want to say I'm so sorry that we were running short and didn't take a break, and I do know that was an extra burden on the captioners, so thank you so much, and we'll try to build in a little more lag time with our next meeting so that doesn't happen.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Crystal, how about you?
Yeah, so good afternoon again, or good evening at this point. I'd also like to thank everyone and really underscore the fact that the committee has put in countless hours of work to really help us shape the way that we're thinking around some of our high impact efforts around climate and sustainability, and how do we integrate that into our acquisition process. Wonderful thought conversation also from our speakers, our guest speakers today. So I'd like to thank you, ladies, and thank you, Cassius and Troy, for your leadership, tremendous leadership in carrying this effort forward. We've come quite a long way since September 2022. And so thank you all to the committee members. Lots of work goes on behind the scenes between meetings so that we can prepare these recommendations. So I'm excited to take them to Administrator Carnahan. Thank you so much for your time and effort that you have volunteered to our country. Because it truly makes a difference, not just for us today, but also in the future. I'd like to thank you, Boris, David, Skylar, and Stephanie for your work and your leadership in facilitating and managing all of these wonderful and smart people. I know it is a lot of work on top of your regular job. So thank you all for today's hearing, and happy holidays to you and your families.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Troy. Thank you, Cassius. And I do believe that public service took a step forward today with this group of ideas. I really feel honored to be a public servant here and be amongst all of you here. I would say we have a lot work to do, but I feel like today was a massive milestone for this committee. We've got 10 new recommendations that were approved. As Jeff said, we will pull together a report that will have the details, and it will really get into the house. These implementations get implemented, and we will work with the committee to ensure that that gets pulled together. And once Troy and Cassius sign that report, then it makes its way to GSA. And then GSA will get the opportunity to review, evaluate, and really consider each of these ideas as opportunities for the agency and really for the federal government as a whole. So great work today. For those of you in the public that stay with us to this point, we will share everything that you heard today. We'll share presentations and certainly any of the things that came up here so that you will have the opportunity to see it. And as soon as the report is provided to GSA, it will also be posted on our website. So it will be available publicly. We've had a lot of feedback from the first report, and so we're really glad that your work committee, GAFAC, it's making a difference for a lot of people, not just the federal government, by the way. There's other groups that are looking at this work very closely. So with that said, I want to give my friend Stephanie an opportunity to say a few words here before we close. Stephanie.
Again, good evening, everyone, and I would just like to say thank you. It is always an honor and a privilege to work with all of you. You know that. And I just look forward to future work and endeavor. And I'll pass it back to Boris for adjournment.
Thank you. Thank you. And so again, and thank you, Skylar, and thank you, David, for a fabulous job supporting us. So at this point, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for participating today.